Twitter.
Yeah, the fixing will definitely be interesting because I do like legitimately think that like having a lot of explore does count as fixing.
Yeah, I mean, you
Like-
get through your deck. It's like, what was it, LTR, where we had our looting? Like, you could see a lot of your deck that way. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's weird because like it's less reliable. It's better at fixing for like a single splash than fixing for a 5-color splash currently. Well, another reason why I think red might be a more of a fixing color is because it is kind of more shallow. Like because like the red commons seem kind of all over the place. Like being able to splash for other things helps there. Like
You're
if
saying, like,
you
start
can
out,
do,
pick
like,
good cards, and then get
yeah,
red
if you
fixing
can just
middle of
like
the pack?
have a braid plundering pirate as your like red cards, and then like and then like take cards of other colors.
Well, but I mean, but think about how to get into it. If you're saying I'm just going to pick the best card in the pack for the first like 5-6 picks, and then you see some red is coming open, then I mean, it might potentially get you in there.
Right. Tweeted from the right account also this time.
Oh, good job.
I'm getting better. The fact that they switched off TweetDeck makes my tweeting from wrong account non-existent. Who knew that it was the TweetDeck that was actually making me dox myself all the time? Okay, good, reposted, yes, liked, good, all good.
Yeah, let me get on Twitter. I'll do that. Yeah.
Twitch, creator dashboard. Let's see what's going on there. Blah 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 blah. Stream manager. Okay. Wow, someone followed me 10 minutes ago. Well, they missed the existing stream by 8 minutes. Well, what a shame for them. Okay, pick laser. Yes, important laser. Split the windows. In my ultra professional setup of one screen.
I'm on a laptop, but it's I can't imagine doing this on one screen like on your side.
I mean, I split. I have StreamYard on 1/4 of a screen and presentation on the other 3/4.
Oh, you're good then. Okay, gotcha. Yeah.
And StreamYard has the chat, so I don't have to worry about it. I have Twitch in the other window just in case to see if someone raided us to thank them. And that's it. You don't need more. No. 8 viewers we have. I don't know. I first time I'm doing this skeleton stream, and I'm honestly a bit skeptical about if this format is going to work. I don't know. I have a weird feeling about it.
I have some question marks too. I'm going to chalk that up to me just not being good enough at evaluating a set beforehand, and some other people could probably figured it out.
Is weird. I don't think that it obviously doesn't work. I think there are weird parts of it that, yeah.
I don't think it's gonna be like a miss or anything. It's very different from the last ones in terms of like I felt more comfortable in the previous ones looking at the decks that I understand what's going on, and here I don't. And I think that we're gonna get it when I look at the removal. I had some doubts if the removal is up to the quality that we were used to.
Like usually I try and do mid-range stuff when I start, and I'll probably start aggro decks the first couple of days because I'm not sure how to take advantage of some. I'm not sure what I'm going to draft. It's going to be something people should be noticing but aren't noticing it initially because I'm not noticing it. I think so.
I think I have I feel like I have a solid guess for how each of the colors will play out individually. I don't know like whether these guesses are correct. but yeah, I don't know. It feels this set feels more like less deep than most sets, I guess.
Yeah,
Maybe
common.
ironic given the theming of caverns.
Yeah, I should. Yeah, Circo, real quick. How do you want to do the archetypes? Because Jason, are you single color and kind of digging into those?
I didn't. So last night I did some prep for this by just like going through the single color archetypes like I usually do, and I was going to like consolidate those into like 2-color archetypes, but then I fell asleep and didn't wake up until like literally 4 p.m. So
do we want to? I don't know if it's best to start with a couple of your mono and then go into.
But I think that the slides more or less cover your mono stuff as well to a large extent.
I can
so we
can stuff in the slides.
Gotcha. I didn't click through your archetype skeleton. Sorry. If the slides cover it, then that's great.
I mean, I've seen when you were building them yesterday, so I thought it was like quite large of it was based on the things that you put in the deck anyway. Yep.
Yeah.
Right. We have some people in the chat. That's good. Welcome, chat. Shall we start with the actual thing? Or are you happy to chill for 5 more minutes and warm up a bit?
I'm fine with whatever the group wants.
We can vamp if we need to vamp.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of words on these cards. My eyes are very bad, and it's hard to read them in sealeddeck.tech.
Oh yeah, no, that's always a problem. Luckily,
you haven't memorized every single card yet.
What? I'm such a poser.
Obviously, that's what you do when you do the bloody removal analysis, because you need to read everything.
Oh God. Well, that was my question. Kind of coming into this is like, because I didn't play like sort of older Magic sets. Like my first draft format was Guilds of Ravnica, and so I'm wondering if this is going to be like a return to the mythical battle cruiser Magic age, right? That I've heard about from draft formats of yore. People said that like Brothers War might be something like that. Then it turned out the aggro decks were too good, and the giant robots were not really a thing. You never really wanted to do that. But in this set, where removal's pretty disappointing, and like maybe you can get value from just like having a bunch of stuff, rectangles on the battlefield, and then crafting something, that goes over the top. Maybe that's going to be what the format's about.
Yeah, the thing is, with going over the top, most of the things you craft are like a vanilla 5/5 or something.
Yeah, I guess.
And if that goes over the top, that's going to be a problematic format.
I mean, it's possible, but we have 1 mana 2/2s and 2 mana 2/3s, and so I don't know.
1 mana 2/2s with haste, nonetheless.
With haste, and I guess the green one doesn't have haste, but also it's green's its best 1-drop far and away.
Oh yeah,
the uncommon.
Well, no, I think that the dinosaur ramper is actually good in the dinosaur deck as a 1 mana.
Oh yeah, that's true. And there's probably enough dinos in like red green. I don't know.
But I guess at least 6, 7 good aggressive 1-drops, because there are the couple of flyers.
Yeah, the flyers. Yeah. No, the 1-drops are back. Like I won't feel bad about having 6, 7, 8 1-drops.
Okay, we'll see. All right, I think let's just crack on with it and get the things out of the way so we can completely aimlessly speculate about the cards. Right, ready in 5. Hi everyone, and welcome to our Lost Caverns of Ixalan draft archetype discussion. I'm joined today by JasonILTG, Zakagan, and Adam, and we're going to be talking about the new upcoming format, and we're going to look at the deck skeletons we built for the purpose, and we are going to use those deck skeletons and some other analyses that we are going to include here to speculate on what the format might look like, and maybe prepare you for the pre-release, prepare you for the first days of drafting, and prepare you for theory crafting yourselves, and even give you tools to do so. Before we go to that, since I am going to put it as part of the magic numbers this time around, I'd like to thank my patrons and my sponsor for allowing me to continue my jolly ramblings. So thanks for that. And Did I tell who my sponsor is? Did I say mtgazone.com? Yes, I said that mtgazone.com. Good. Let's move on from that part and let's dive directly from what are those skeletons we've been talking about. So basically, skeletons are decks we built based on the new set. They are trying to be reasonable or / realistic. So we have like 0 to 2 rares, 0 to 8 uncommons per each deck, and we fill them up with the commons that we think are going to be the most suitable for a particular color combination. And if you are interested in doing them, there is a link here to sealdeck.tech. Sealdeck.tech is the tool that always allowed us to build those skeletons. They're amazing. They're doing it so that building sealed pools is easier for people, because Arena is notoriously terrible in helping you build your seals. So you can, if you're playing a sealed on Arena, you can export your pool there and build your deck in the software, and then maybe copy the deck list back into Arena, so that it's less painful for you to build them. But because they are fans of us building skeletons, they also provide tool for building skeletons. So they give you like a set of cards from LCI that you can put in your decks, remove them, build the decks like that, so you can play around with that yourselves. We all use them to build our pools, and sealdeck.tech is great. They don't pay us for saying that. They are just great, and we are just going to say it for free because that's the kind of people we are. Right. Before we go into the actual decks, there's always a couple of things that we talk about, the basics of the format, and usually we start with the removal. How is it aligning in this format? And this set is pretty weird, I have to say. There is not so much damage-based removal as we have been used to in the previous sets. Actually, there is much less removal in total. I think that when I was doing my removal analysis for the Wilds of Eldraine, I counted roughly 52 cards that were somehow removal or tempo removal or counter spells. In this set, I only found 40 cards, and that was already pushing it quite a lot to find some of them that I could theoretically classify as removal. Also, for example, there's no specific spell that will deal with X1s on a one-to-one basis. There's only Tectonic Hazard, which is a sort of very mini micro sweeper, maybe. Just deals 1 damage to each opponent and each creature they control for 1 mana. It also is not particularly amazing. It only deals with 17% of the common creatures, so there's not so many X1s. Mind you, there are plenty of things that make 1/1 tokens, so Tectonic Hazard will deal with those things, but I still don't think it's a playable card for that reason. There's quite some few uncommons that are actually 1 toughness, which is a bit surprising, 23%. But 70% is much less than in WoW. It was 25, for example. Then we have 2 damage spells. Deadweight is a great example. Deadweight is, I think it's a good set for it because it's a permanent removal, which means that it will trigger your dissenting, whatever variant of fathomless dissenting. Any variant of dissent you will choose, it will trigger it. It does hit 50% of common creatures and 40 uncommons for 29% of rares. 50% of commons is roughly par for the course for the recent sets. So there's actually quite a large amount of X2s in this format. So Deadweight looks to be pretty decent. Weirdly, we don't really have a 2 damage spell in red. At common, we have 1 at uncommon. So there's no shock variant. So there's not so much that deals with X2s really in this set. Even weirder, there's no strictly deals 3 spell in any of the colors. There is a rare Trumpeting Carnosaur, 6 mana, 7/6. You can sort of channel it to deal 3 damage to target creature. There is a Braid, but a Braid is actually a highly upgraded version of a 3 damage spell because it also can deal with the bigger artifact creatures that are here. So it will hit roughly 10% more of the stuff than the 3 damage spell would hit. Anyway, 3 damage is enough to deal with 72% of the common creatures, 60% of the uncommons, and 50% of rares. This is also relatively good in terms of how much it deals with. Then we got 4 damage spells. Again, not a great selection of those in the format. There is Cosmium Blast, which is yet another variant of Divine Arrow with a different name that will never be able to be reprinted anywhere else ever again. So because Cosmium is specific for this set, I guess. So this one hits 83% of common creatures. This is actually very little. And this means that there is quite a large fraction of common creatures that have toughness greater than 4. I think the largest fraction of creatures like that we've seen in any of the recent sets. So there's some big stuff going on in this. And also there is not so much removal. Then we have Join the Dead. That's 1 black for an instant. It gives target creature -5/-5 until end of turn. And if you have 4 or more permanents in your graveyard, it gives it -10/-10. In its basic version, it's good enough. It kills like 93% of all the creatures at common and uncommon, and 82% of the ones at rare. So still, it doesn't deal with 20% of the rares. And the upgraded version, it kills everything except for Galta. Hopefully you won't be seeing Galta on the opposing side. And if you do, well, then you won't be able to deal with the Join the Dead, that's for sure. And then there's a weird one, Runaway Boulder. That's a flash artifact for 6 that when it EDBs, it deals 6 damage to target creature an opponent controls. It also has cycling, which I don't know. I think it will be reluctantly playable sometimes because yes, it's 6 mana, but it is suitable for any color. It can trigger the descending easily by cycling it, and it also can be a piece of cardboard on the board after it's fulfilled its use. So maybe in some like controlling version of white-red that wants to tap things to get some kind of effect, it's going to be actually playable. And it deals with like 95% of the stuff. So it actually is quite efficient in how much it targets, if not very efficient on mana, because 6 mana is a lot. But maybe if you have some ramping, that can be actually useful. And even weirder, there is very little conditional removal. So we have a Braid, and that deals with around 80% of commons, 75% uncommons, and around 60% of rares, which is a lot. It's much more than the 3 damage spell would do. So you see, 3 damage spell would only deal with 47% of the rares. This one gets you additional 10 percentage point upgrade for what it does, because it can kill artifact creatures, and of course it can also deal with non-creature artifacts if you have a need to deal with that. There are a couple of them that will definitely be a good target for a Braid. What else? And that's more or less it. There is nothing in the set that kills things with toughness 4 or greater, or power 4 or greater. That we are used to having at least one of those. There is no black removal that deals with creatures with mana value 3 or less, or 2 or less, you name it. There's nothing like that, which is also a bit surprising. So yeah, a bit weird removal that is not as abundant as usually. And quite a lot of it is actually sweepers or mini sweepers, which is even stranger. I picked also Over the Edge, but there are a couple of other spells that do that. And this basically shows you how many artifact creatures are in the format. It's around 22% of the commons, 23% of the uncommons, and 12% of the rares. I think that all the mythics are non-artifact, but there are several rare artifact creatures. So Over the Edge can deal with that. This is definitely not good enough to be played in the main deck, but I think Over the Edge might see some play in decks that really, really care about exploring. Because there you have something that can explore twice. This card has the second option that you can explore twice. And on occasions it will kill something. That opponent has. I guess it will be, more useful in best of 3 when you can actually know that the opponent has something that is worth killing with that. Then there are sweepers. I think that Unstable Glyph Bridge, that's a very good sweeper. It's a 5 mana. When it ETBs, if you cast it, you choose a creature with power 2 or less for each player. And important thing here is that you actually choose for the opponent as well. And these two, the creatures that you selected survive, the rest dies. So you can keep like a good 2/2 for yourself, or even a 2/3, a pathetic 1/1 for the opponent, and then kill the rest. And also it has craft. So for 5 mana, you can flip it into a 5/3 flyer. And whenever an opponent casts a spell, they cannot attack you. And whenever they attack you, they cannot cast spells on their turn. So they can either attack or cast spells, which probably means that straight after they will be casting spells because they wouldn't have anything to attack with after the Glyph Bridge wiped their board. But also like a 5/3 flyer will kill them relatively quickly if it's not being treated with. So yeah, it looks like a really, really strong card. There is Calamitous Caven. That's 4 mana, deals X damage to each creature and each planeswalker, where X is the number of caves. Caves are the new subtype of lands. Remains to be seen if there is a cave deck, and also remains to be seen if there is a cave deck, is it going to be interested in playing Calamitous Caven? You remember the Gates payoff, Gates Ablaze was costing 1 less mana and had a very good synergy with a creature that was always bigger than the amount of damage it dealt in the whatever the goat thing was, something ram. And that was a neat combo because you could play the ram, wipe the board with your gates, and then proceed with beating down with the ram. Here, I don't think we have anything like this, so it's going to be pretty tricky. Also, caves are not as good in mana fixing as the gates were because they are strictly monocolored. So I don't know if Calamitous Caven is a thing that we'll be playing. Maybe, once every 100 drafts you're going to get into a cave deck. Who knows? Then I mentioned Tectonic Hazard. Looks like it's not going to be playable, but possibly a decent sideboard card in best of 3. And then Terror Tide. Now, this one is actually interesting. 4 mana, sorcery. All creatures get -X until end of turn, where X is the number of permanent cards in your graveyard. This is something that will probably make a deck, and you can probably make some kind of a descent deck that is built around control. And then Terror Tide is going to be a great card in that deck. It looks like it's going to be easily like -5, -5, -6, -6, which was as good enough as being a Wrath. So maybe some kind of a deck with Terror Tide and some top end is going to be neat. And what else we have? Malicious Eclipse. That's a 1 black sorcery. All creatures get -2/-2 until end of turn, and you exile the ones that die this turn. So sort of a technology against go wide aggro, potentially either sideboard, or you need a deck that is really afraid of playing against go wide aggro to the extent that they were willing to have a dead card against other decks. And also like the -2/-2 exiles, so you sort of counter some of the descent strategies, I guess. Right, these are the sweepers. I told you that the creature sizing is a bit off. Here I have the sizing of the creatures by how much toughness they have from sets since Midnight Hunt. And one thing you see, 1 toughness creatures are at lowest since Midnight Hunt, only 17% at common. Then we have quite a lot of 2-drops, X2s. It's 33%. Only Midnight Hunt had more of those, and that's quite a lot more than, for example, Lord of the Rings had or Brothers War had. Those sets had quite a lot of X1s, and this one doesn't. So, and when you sum them up, number of X1s and X2s is roughly the same, but they're slightly differently distributed. And what I would say is that one really outlying feature of the set is there is 17% of the creatures with more than 4 toughness, which is way more than any set in the recent times. Wilds of Eldraine only had 5% of the common creatures that had more than 4 toughness. This one has 17. So you're going to see big things. I want to say more frequently, but on the other hand, in the in the Wilds of Eldraine, you saw Hamlet Glutton all the time, and somehow we managed to deal with it most of the time. So yeah, the fact that there are 17% of those doesn't mean that they are going to be very playable. So we have to sort of think if the quantity of those creatures means that they're going to be played, or does it mean that we will have a lot of unplayable cards that we try to avoid putting in our decks? On the other hand, again, you might see opponents playing them. So yeah, Jason.
Part of that is the land cyclers, right? Like, I mean, obviously a small part, but like, the 5 land cyclers all have more than 4 toughness. I'm pretty sure. I think.
Yeah, that's true. But Lord of the Rings also had those, and
yeah, well, not all of the Lord of the Rings one had more than
that's
5
true
toughness.
because Oliphant was 4 toughness, and Lorien Revealed was just a spell.
Yeah, a Mom is more comparable, I think, and that one had 12%.
Yeah, but still, there's a lot of those are also on the backside of the craft cards. I counted those in my statistics of creatures
yes.
because they will become creature at some stage of the game.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's it from me here. I guess it's Adam's children, and by children I mean slides right now.
Yeah, sure. I'll jump in. I will say I assume it's dinosaurs that are causing all those 4+. So a lot of green stuff. Other colors didn't look
But
like they had too much of that.
there's the 4-mana 2/5 in blue that I think is something.
Yeah, add some defensive.
Best 2/5 crab that we've seen in recent years.
Hearing about all this large toughness makes me like the black 1/1 with Death Touch that mills 2 when it enters even more.
Oh yeah, you'll see those in deck shells, I'm pretty sure.
I put them.
Yeah. So I guess jumping off, just a few slides that are just big picture, and then Jason will talk about colors and maybe how we can think about those. So if you've played Limited in the last 2 to 3 years, or listened to Lords of Limited or anything like that, we have cardboard theory alive and well in this set. There are a lot of cards that are not just putting themselves in play, but adding some other piece of cardboard, whether it's a map token like in our blue Waterwind Scout, or maybe a fungus in the Mycoid, maybe it's just some artifacts with the tote. There's one card bringing 2, 3 pieces of cardboard with it, and with that, one is just potentially good because you can use it for different things, but that optionality means maybe you can focus your deck and focus your drafting around sacrificing or crafting with those artifacts, or using that. We don't really have to enter the battlefield triggers like we had with Celebration, but there are leave the battlefield when we talk about Descended for this turn, or Descend 4, 8, or Fathomless. Like getting things into your graveyard per turn can provide you some benefit. The question will probably be for the first couple weeks, like what do these extra pieces of cardboard add? Is it a fourth of a card, half of a card, 3/4 of a card? And that's like one way to maybe think about it. But another way is probably within a particular color pair, what synergies to maybe unlock, what cards that might be only good in that color pair and you might be able to see later in a draft are you going to be able to get based on the cards you're drafting that add these extra pieces of cardboard that another color pair may not want, and may just add more power to your deck through synergies that you might not otherwise get. So it's day -7 or 8 or whatever, so it's tough to know for sure. But in general, more pieces of cardboard, more better, more or less. And then I think Jason added, or Circle added this good point at the bottom. Even if the cardboard is just sitting there, there are some cards that say tap 2 artifacts, or 1 or 2 permanents, and get effect X, whatever it is. Like the red-white Signpost and Common, for example, upon attacks, you can tap creatures or artifacts, and then you get to discover, which is probably a pretty good ability. You're adding some other card to the battlefield or to your hand that can be real useful. So you can use this cardboard once on the battlefield in a variety of ways, and that's probably gonna be very color and sets of color dependent.
Yeah, I added that. I think that there's quite some few of those things, and there's a couple of things that do something when they become tapped, and there is some crewing going on also along those lines. So I think that having like the Tinkerer's Tote might be it might be brainless to sacrifice it and gain life very quickly, but sometimes it just will be much better to keep it on the board and just tap it to put +1/+1 counter on something, or tap it to ping someone for 1. And I think that this kind of a nickel and dime deck might be a thing if it comes together, if you get the right pieces for it.
Well, one thing that I guess the final point on cardboard, and then Jason can jump in, is oftentimes when you add a lot of cardboard to the battlefield, as it were, the stronger players can find ways to eke out the most out of their cards. It's not just like Circo said. You play the tote, you get these 2/1/1s, and then you probably aren't going to spend a white mana to sack it into turn to gain through life. You're going to find something to craft it with, or to sack it to the new Deadly Dispute variant to draw some cards, or tap it with something. And do that maybe 1, 2, 3 times before it eventually gets sacked. Yeah, sorry, Jason.
Yeah, I don't know. Like the tote just seems kind of insane to me. Like you're basically getting 2/1/1s in the food, except the food costs white to crack instead of 2 mana, which is probably better. So yeah, there's just so many things that make like random pieces of cardboard in this set, and there's plenty of ways to use them. So.
I think I put tote in every single white archetype I had, and most of the time two of them, because why not? Because they also have so many overarching synergies in the format. Like in white red, it's giving you this tap abilities that you might want to be used. In white blue, that's an artifact or something, and it's always there's some use of that. In black white, it's sacrifice fodder supreme, because it gives free pieces of cardboard for 1 card, and it looks like it's going to be one of the better 3-drops in the format, in my opinion.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Also,
not
notably, notably, like the 1/1s, like the artifact creature 1/1s, you can just craft with those. Craft has to go with cards in your graveyard or just permanent you control. And so if something says craft with artifact or craft with creature, then you can just use one of the 1/1s, and then that doesn't get rid of your descend either.
Yeah. That's a good transition to the next slide, where we talk about craft a little bit more.
What, you want me to click the next slide, I guess?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we'll be stuck on this slide for
all right. There.
So craft predominant, because all the cards are artifacts, and just sky colors are a little more artifacty. They're housed within those colors. So at least on my initial assessment, there's definitely some power in the uncommons and the rares. The commons, there's probably some ways to leverage, like we said, if you're getting into extra cardboard, you might be able to use some of the commons and they'll play a little better than you would expect. But you really have to find those micro synergies. Otherwise, some of the commons do seem a little underrated, a little kind of meh. But uncommon, some of the uncommons, some of the rares definitely provide a lot of power. And then when you craft them, you actually can get a good card in the back. So you're not saying, what am I spending my card on, the front of the card or the back of the card? Sometimes each one of those cards is worth at least 3/4 to a full card, so you're getting true good card advantage off of some of this craft. That being said, there are some limitations. So it's crafting at sorcery speed, so you're spending mana on your turn. It might mean that you're not able to interact on your opponent's turn as effectively, whether it's you're not able to hold up a counter spell or another type of interaction spell to affect whatever they're doing on board. It can tie up your mana, and then because it seems like a high enough density of craft, which are all artifacts or just other artifacts throughout the set. Maybe a question to the group in terms of what they think about incidental artifact hate versus potential main deck and best of one, not in best of 3 necessarily. They think there's enough strong craft cards or artifact cards to maybe lend itself to that in the right type of deck, versus no, we're still probably not gonna main deck the artifact hate, even in a set where it is somewhat of a focus.
I guess I just wanted to say that maybe let's give Zach the time to shine, because Zach is the new addition to the team. I didn't introduce you, by the way, but
it's okay. People thought there was just this weird guy hanging out in the background.
Todd looks different today. Yeah.
But no. I guess I wanted to ask. Do you know if there's a instant speed disenchant in the set? Are you gonna get hosed if you tap out to craft your thing, and then your opponent just goes disenchant, and then you time walk yourself?
So there's a braid. A braid is an instant speed
that's
matter.
Okay.
So the thing is, you don't get You don't get more hosed than you would be by just, for example, with the iceberg, right? You wouldn't get more hosed than you would be by playing a 6 mana 6/6 like normally, right? Than they have with them having a murder up, right? Like there's no way to like interrupt the craft even if the backside has a enters the battlefield ability for some reason, right? Like the ability as part of the cost you exile the artifact you're crafting with and everything else, and you should usually be crafting like out of your graveyard or with irrelevant things on the battlefield. Like usually you don't want to craft your iceberg with like a 3/3 artifacts that you control already. That's probably not going to be the best trade for you. But like I think the better way to think about it is like the existence of these like large artifact creatures from craft probably does make things like a braid go up in value, but it doesn't necessarily mean that like it doesn't mean that the artifact creatures are going to be like worse than normal. Like Sirkovit said during the removal section, there's like less total removal even in the set. So like,
but notably,
maybe these large things will be better.
Notably, the Azorius one, the Azorius signpost uncommon, the mural, when it crafts, it's an artifact that taps to make a 4/4, right? So they'll still have there'll still be an opportunity. You craft. I think you have priority.
There is no opportunity because exiling it is a cost.
Right. Yep.
Okay. No. I mean,
so you pay mana and it disappears. So you have to do it before someone decides.
Yeah, after it comes back, you have priority, so you can tap it. And you can get the 4/4 no matter like whether they have a braid or not. They can braid either the 4/4 or the like 4/4 maker, probably, but like
they're probably gonna hose your factory, but you still get a 4/4. So that's like I feel like in that way, like you're more or less happy to craft whenever you have the opportunity to.
Yeah. And to answer your question, so there is the deconstruction hammer, the equipment.
Yeah.
You can tap. And then, so that's like an instant speed along with the braid.
Heads up.
Right, you would be aware of that. And then there's the Dusk Rose Reliquary, which is obviously sorcery speed. Artifact comes in. It's kind of like the Bone Splinters, but it can hit artifacts as well.
And don't forget my boy Trashy B, yo.
Yeah. And then there's the rare, right? That can like fizzle or stifle.
The
ability. Yeah. So I mean, I guess you could use that when they do craft. I would imagine.
The stifle is actually blows you out because like as we said, it's part of the cost, so you just completely counter it.
I mean it's rare.
I think so. There's also the bounce spell, which can be good against some of them, but also maybe gives your opponent back some value. Like if you bounce their 6/6 after they craft it. They invested 6 mana, but then they get to draw another card or something. And so, like, it's unclear.
Yeah. I mean, ideally, you're using cards that are at least worth, like, close to a full card on the front face. Like, the Saw Blades, I mean, that's probably going to kill something and then turn into, like, a pretty good creature. Like, that's probably fine if they don't play back. You're not too upset.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so there's not enough. I mean, we're all going to play however many braids we get, I assume, and we'll probably play the other cards, so it's not as big of a deal. But it's just good to think about that these are like artifact and just how that could affect potential decisions you make, or like other synergies, micro synergies within your deck construction. If we look at the next slide, and we're going to start our descending, conjugate our verb as many ways as we can.
Oh no, okay.
Sort of thing, yeah. So predominantly in black and red, but like you'll see a white card here, for example, and there's just 12 cards that say, if you descended this turn, then X, Y, Z kind of happens. The nice thing is, I mean, if you've ever played a game of Magic, things just kind of go to the graveyard. So your opponent can oftentimes see this if this is already on the board, and it might affect the way they block or the way they make decisions on gameplay, but we get this thing called, second main phase. So you can, do your attacks, let the things happen as they were, and then potentially you can play one of these cards second main, and because they're pretty much all proccing at the start of your end step, then you would get to make your fungus or get to put a counter on something, or scry or make a treasure, whatever the card is, kind of whatever it enables, whatever that trigger leads to. which is kind of nice. But also, we'll talk about mill and all that stuff. But there's other ways to get things with graveyard besides just combat. You can sack stuff. You can have a mill. You could, discard something potentially. Like there's ways to cycling. Yeah, that we have a few cards that cycle. Explore also, yeah. Explore is a big one, and just in general, that's proven to be very strong and limited. So you can kind of turn that on. So in terms of how this affects combat, I would imagine it'll kind of be like, what was the 2/4 in white and black where it would make a 1/1 if something died that turn? This was in LTR. I can't remember the card, but it was a good signpost uncommon. Denethor, thank you. Yeah, and you always had to be thinking like they're in these colors, they have 3 mana, they've gone to combat. Like, do I want to give them a free 1/1? So I think enough of these cards are playable that you'll probably need to be thinking like, are they making a trade because they want a small game, and making a trade because they want to get some trigger, at their end step? Like, what are they trying to do? And just figure out how to navigate against around that, I suppose.
Yeah, it'll make trading worse. Yeah. Like it'll disincentivize you to trade. Though I don't think any of these are like super backbreaking. Like none of these are as good as Denethor. I think maybe the red-black signpost or the make a trade one.
Good. Yeah, and maybe the I don't think any of them will be good as Denethor, like you said. But maybe the signpost, maybe the bigger black one or the smaller red one, depending on what your deck's trying to do. If you want to make more cardboard, use it to sack or tap or whatever. But yeah, and Denethor, these are not.
Notably,
the thing that Denethor had, the thing that Denethor had is that it fueled itself basically. Yep. And then these all produce treasures. They don't trigger. They produce the 1/1 black fungus tokens. They don't trigger the descending.
Tokens dying does not trigger descent. That's a very important fact.
Yeah. That is good to know. You can't just keep sending in your fungi saying they've got to take one or else I just get another one. So that's good.
Yeah, I think that this all looks so very nickel-dimey. This is Ruin Lurker, but you just like play it on turn 1. It's a 1/1 flying lifelinker, which is good enough. And then sometimes you will scry, for example. You don't need to build around it. But I guess like things like Deep Goblin Skulltaker, you want to play it as a 3/3, and you want to probably make it into a 4/4 to warrant playing the card, because it will have to pay itself off in the good games for the times when you're going to just play it as a 2/2 and feel like a buffoon. So yeah.
I will say I'm encouraged that a lot of this, like nickel and dime, you said, or half card here, quarter heart card here, is coming back, because I feel like it really can reward tight gameplay and creative gameplay, which will kind of be nice to see. Yeah. So.
Yeah, Boomer Magic is back. You heard it here first.
Yeah. Minus all the 1 and 2 drops that look to be pretty good. Boomer Magic is back. Yeah.
I think that in Descent, one thing that is I think is going to be important is how you like your descent happening, because here it's only about descended. I guess the next one is about descent.
Yeah, you can just go to the next slide. Yeah, because it'll help with the discussion. Yeah, some of these cards obviously are a good deal better than others. Some of them are just fine without you having 4, 8, fathomless, descend, whatever. Like, you're probably always going to play Join the Dead, probably as many copies as you get. You're probably going to play the green black signpost, because Descend 4 probably shouldn't be too challenging to get in that color pair, and it just gets really good after that. But like, are you going to play a 1/3 that might become a 4/3 at some point? I don't know. You're going to play some of these other ones. So a lot of that
are because it's cute.
Yeah, it is cute. It is very cute. But yeah, many of these are below rate before Descend's enabled. That being said, we have a lot of ways to enable it. Just combat. You can mill cards, get it, and if you get a permanent into the graveyard, you're contributing to that. Explore. You may choose to surveil a permanent to the graveyard if it turns something on, or you're digging for a particular card. Or crafting. If you did have like a trinkety artifact that you refined to craft with that's on the board and on your graveyard already, that can help potentially turn on Descend. So there's ways to turn it on, but it's unlikely to have Descend 4 enabled, super early in the game. So, it should probably happen with normal gameplay, but you're not going to say my 3/3 for 1 black green is going to be a 5/5 on turn 4. Like, that's probably not normally going to be the case. So just recognizing this might lead to, wanting a bit of a slower game in these color pairs, looking to trade off, looking to play more value, more nickel and dime, and then try and take over the mid to late game. These, at that point, undercosted threats. It's just trying to get to that point and have enough interaction, enough early defensive speed to make these worthwhile, or else they may underperform. So how does this affect like drafting and deck building? Like I think it'll probably be like on a very card specific basis, because I'm not sure if enough of these are good enough before you activate Descend 4, Descend 8 to make it just, jam all the cards in you can in your deck and just find a way to turn it on. But I don't know if other people have thoughts on that.
I don't know. I'm looking at those cards and I'm like, what you said early. I think Join the Dead and Akawaii is easy game.
Yeah.
But Basking Capybara and Deduct Echo, I'm struggling with understanding if those cards are going to be good enough. Because I think 3/2 flyer that draws a card is decent, but
it's a little overcosted.
It's
It's almost
overcast.
Ball Drifter, right?
Eh,
No, it's not. Yeah.
wow.
It's sure, and at least in 2023, it's a long way from.
But we're not in 2023. We're in.
Oh yeah, I forgot. We're in 2012 or whatever.
We're in 2012. There's no removal, man.
Yeah, fire is
On
not
the
happening
comments
yet,
of,
guys.
like, when can you expect Descend 4 to be online? Because I think 4 is the
Yes.
number that you actually care
Correct.
most about being online.
Yeah.
I think that I would say it is possible to get it online on turn 4 if there's a lot of trading that happens, and you like play specifically some self-mill cards. But I would expect it around turn 5. Like I think if you're building around it, like turn 5 tends to be like where you would probably expect it. Like I don't know, like you play 2-drop that mills you for 2, you like trade a thing, and then like you play something else that goes to the graveyard somehow, like a dead weight or something, and then you have to Descend 4 probably. Obviously, like not every card milled will be a permanent, but like most of them will be. There's like a low density of non-permanent in the set. A lot of the spell effects are on permanents, but still. So because you expect it around like turn 5 or like usually around turn 5, sometimes around turn 6, and like if you're really lucky, turn 4. Like that's I think how you should be evaluating these. And then like the question is like how good are these if they are turned on by turn 5, right? I think Didact Echo like isn't good mostly because a 5 mana 3/2 flyer draw card is not very good. I mean, like I could be wrong; it could be fine, but I think
it might fit in a one of in some decks, but you're not going to want more than one and probably zero a lot of the time.
Yeah. And then something like Basking Capybara, right? Like the thing is, like 1/3 gets outclassed so quickly, and it doesn't do enough in the early game. And then like on turn 5, it's like a 4/3, and that's okay, but it still only really just trades. So I'm not particularly excited for the Capybara. Also, another thing to note is like we have fewer 1 toughness creatures than usual, and that makes a 1/3 worse. There's more like 2 power creatures that 2 toughness creatures that just bounce with the Capybara. That makes that worse. Like
But hey, if it trades, then it fuels Descended and Descent.
There you go. Jason,
Synergy.
I mean,
I do have a question for you,
sure.
Jason.
I mean, sure. It's going to be like an okay 2-drop probably, but it's just nothing exciting, I think.
Sure.
So,
well, that's the problem is that a lot of stuff at common in this set is really not exciting. The commons seem very shallow.
In some colors,
I
more
disagree with you for 2 colors in specific, but
okay. But
we'll get
for
there.
green, it's
I wouldn't call them colors. No, I wouldn't call them colors. It's lack of colors and presence of all colors, technically. No.
There you go. Yeah.
Am I right in what you're trying to think about? White and black.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Those are pretty deep, I think. So, Jason, it seems like blue and black maybe are going to be a little. Well, black probably has a chance to be a little more controlling as a color, and many of the good black cards are some are creatures and some are like deadweight and enchantment, but many are spells that aren't going to like affect Descend. Like if we're talking about our blue bounce spell or our black Join the Dead or our Saka artifact or creature draw 2 cards, make a map, like none of those are going to turn on Descend necessarily. So I'm not.
Yeah,
that makes me a little less likely to feel like it's going to turn on that easily unless you have the self mill.
So the thing is, like blue also like. Yes, the spells will yes, blue and black have some good spells, but those good spells like you aren't really casting on turns 2, 3, 4 as much. More on turn 4 than anything. But and if you're casting them on turn 4, often it's like double spelling. Like I don't think Join the Dead is something that you're firing off on turn 3 all the time, right? on the contrary, like blue has, you know, the 2 mana 1/2 explore that helps turn on descend. And it has the 3 mana 2/2 comes with a map token that helps turn on descend. Black has obviously like the 2 mana 1/1 death touch mill 2, or the 2 mana 1/1 they exile a card. Like there's a bunch of things that you can do in blue black that are like grindy mid-range kind of cards, not like pure control. Like I'm just going to make sure the board is completely clear. It's more about like playing cards that will trade with your opponent's cards and get value. I think in blue and black, and
I don't
those
think
I
the
think
true control deck exists in this deck. I mean, we'll see, but it doesn't seem like the removal is there, and the payoff is there to play like true blue black control, like we've seen in some
yeah, I
other
don't think
sets.
so.
Now,
Also
if we go to the next slide, we do look at mill, which is can help with descend. And I know Jason mentioned a couple of these cards already, like the 2 black ones that are probably going to be pretty good, good to pretty good in terms of where they're going to play, the avenues they open. So like being able to mill, and all of these mill yourself, so you don't even have the choice to make a wrong choice. They all mill yourself, so you get a chance to maybe turn on your descend for that turn, or turn on your descended for 8. Also, you may potentially mill something that could be crafted later. So it's maybe very incidental, but it is nice to think about that. And then in terms of playability, I think a lot of this will really depend on what type of like micro or macro synergies you have in your deck that this might turn on, and what your overall game plan is. Like you're probably happy to play a 1/1 death touch if you're trying to set up for more, later game type of deck. You get your mill, maybe you turn on your descend for, like you said, on turn 4 or 5. And that helps you put some cards out that are tougher to kill. Turn the game from you're a little behind to you're at parity or ahead. So I think these are very card dependent. It's tough to say like all mill good, all mill bad. And then sorry, Carl, I don't think there's enough mill to make you go 41 cards, 45 cards, what have you. I
Don't
think
worry, he'll manage.
Well, he might
I think
anyway.
some decks will, but like mostly not. Like it's
Yeah.
not going to be like Stars Beyond Death, where like every black-green deck wants to play like 43 cards.
Right, yeah. No, I don't think we will see that on the norm. And then we don't put explore cards on the side because there's a separate side for explore. But I mean, that is a way to put a card into your graveyard, which is you can. I mean, it's surreal, but I mean, you can kind of think of it as mill in terms of like the same end result of something in your graveyard that you might have potentially wanted there.
Yeah, no, I put it mainly because it overlaps in colors with
Right.
green with green and blue, and then you can just basically double down on those mill synergies by exploring at the same time.
Right. Which
Yeah,
is
notably like explore is less than half of a mill. Like if you explore, that's less than half of mill 1, because first of all, like 40% of the time you're getting a land, and that's not going to go to your graveyard unless you're discarding the hand size, I guess. But usually that's drawing a card is good, but like there is that. Second of all, so sometimes you'll want to keep the thing that you explore into on top, right? Like
not
if
in
you
my
trade
deck,
bombs, or if it's a card that you just really need at that point in time, like keeping it on top is it might be the choice there. And like there's a bit of tension there if you're relying on explore for your milling. So like exploring is less reliable, but it can.
One point on explore. Yeah, I had to read this because I didn't remember from prior Ixalan. So the explorer does say, put that card into your hand if it's a land. It doesn't even give you the option if you wanted to turn on your descend for.
Yeah. Nope.
On your
You're
turn.
not allowed to mill it.
Correct.
You're not allowed to mill the land.
Right. Yeah, I had to review that because I haven't played with Ixalan cards in quite a while. So
yeah, but
I think in Ixalan it wasn't like milling a card wasn't like that much value.
Right.
So.
Yeah. So it's nice we have these mechanics that are kind of leaning together. Like craft is happy to have stuff in your graveyard. Explore might get some stuff there. Mill is useful for that as well. And they tend to be in colors that overlap enough. At least all 3 of those are kind of in blue. I guess if we go to explore, that's one of our we have explore and discover left, and we can get into the colors. We've talked about explore a little bit, predominantly in blue and green, but there are random white and or black cards kind of scattered in there. And many of these cards do look to be playable to very playable. A lot of that will depend on your deck construction and if your luck stat's high enough to draw the card or get the 2/3 for 2 mana on turn 2. But that probably affects the way you're going to build your deck and how you're going to play the game, is figuring out, what paths might occur in my deck and what do I need to have available to me as options, cards in my deck, and ways I can play the game. If I am drawing lands versus I'm, getting these +1/+1 counters on my creatures. But in general, we know that, if you get to play something and draw a card, that's better than playing something and not drawing a card. So this does kind of give that optionality. And also can potentially enable Descender Craft, like we said before, if things do go into the graveyard, though it's not as likely for those, because unless you're searching for a particular card, you're trying to turn on your Descend for, or put like a trinket artifact in the graveyard so that you can craft with it. You'll oftentimes want to draw a card if it's a good card, so you may not turn on Descend or help facilitate craft as often as maybe with like milling, for example. But obviously can facilitate explosive starts. If you play a this green 1/1, if it's a 2/2 on turn 1, you play a 2/3 on turn 2, that's a pretty good aggro start. So there's a chance for explosive starts. And because we looked at the removal with Circo, like there's not many 1 damage to creature, and there's only a little bit of like 2 damage or 3 damage, depending on how these explorers go, you may be able to get out of range of some of the removal that your opponent has, so you can kind of remain proactive, remain being the aggressor. In terms of how this affects like drafting or deck building, I don't think I'm going to change the number of lands I have in my deck based on Explore, but I don't know if people have thoughts on that.
I think with Explore, you should be more willing to play more lands in your deck, not fewer.
Right.
Because, well, okay, asterisk.
Yeah.
One of the main constraints on land count in terms of like going lower on lands is like whether you're hitting your 3rd land drop. Like that's just how it tends to play out. Like if you're playing fewer than 17 lands, you start like struggling to hit your 3rd land drop a bit more than most limited sets. So if you have 1 or 2 mana explorer creatures, though, like a lot of those, that can incentivize you towards like, if you have those kind of explorer creatures and you want them to get counters more often than you want them to draw lands, that pushes you towards playing fewer lands actually, maybe. But the constraint of like whether you want to play more lands tends to be like how flooded are you going to be, and having a higher density of explorer creatures lets you like get through your deck more and like smooth out your late game draws. So if you have things like Pathfinding Axe Jaw, like these slightly more expensive explorer creatures, especially like the creatures that come with maps, that pushes you towards playing more lands. So like I think it depends, and also the effect is fairly small.
How would you do this to Connive also? Or Circular, do you want to say something before we compare it to a more recent mechanic we've seen?
No, I mean, definitely if I have the Nikanzil, I want to play more lands because I probably want to play some sort of a ramp strategy, especially if I have like, maybe 2 of those, because that thing boosts your Explore by quite a lot, so you definitely want to hit the lands.
Yeah. But there's not really like a payoff in this set, except for like, I guess, the Selesnya like signpost. There's not like a payoff for counters, right? There's not. Maybe I missed it in the spoiler, but I was looking for something that said for each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter, you get this bonus. And there didn't seem to be as much of that, although there are like some other cards that do put counters on your creatures that aren't Explorer. There's like that like 4 mana green artifact, the seed stone thing. But like it doesn't seem like you're doing that much with that, except having bigger creatures that hit harder.
Having bigger creatures is good. Like a 1/2 is very different than a 2/3 on your 2 mana card.
Yeah.
Like,
and
honestly, on turn 2, if I had my 3rd land drop in hand, and definitely if I already have my 4th land drop in hand, I'd much rather the Herald Scout see a non-land than the land.
Oh yeah.
Right. So like,
yeah, and it's also like that artifact that gets counters. That thing is going to be grindy as hell if you manage to get it rolling with some of the Explore tokens, because everything that dies puts back the counters. It's slow, but it will be really annoying to deal with.
Yeah. So there's chance for explosive starts. There's chance for grindy types of decks. Probably, if possible, it'd be great to have your deck built so that you can utilize the 1/2 when it's a 1/2 and not a 2/3, whether it's sacking into something or tapping it or some use for it. And maybe a lot of that depends on just how the draft goes and what the colors allow.
I think there's a very specific common card that like I'm gonna talk about on the blue slide that like works better with like helps with the smaller creatures.
Awesome. Well, let's jump to discover, and then we'll jump to the colors.
I'm in the wrong window, and I'm clicking things, and they're not. There we go.
You're good.
Discover.
Yeah. So when I heard that when this was spoiled, I was a little scared, I guess, because I mean we're not going to put 2/4/4 rhinos into play in this limited format, but it sure looks a lot like Cascade, which is a pretty good mechanic. But it seems like there are some cards here that are just going to be very first, second pickable. Like just look very strong. But it looks like they've kind of put Discover on some cards that are maybe a little overcosted because they know you're going to get a 2-for-1. And they're trying to do their best to not make it as broken as it could be. But I don't know. I have some hesitations about this, and I would not be surprised if a weekend is just almost like, ring tempting, where you just take any card that says, the ring tempts you. It might just be these are all 2-for-1s, and you just take them and you figure out a way. So I don't know. We'll say there are some exceptions, but for the most part, these are like discovering at sorcery speed. I mean, obviously, if you look at the counter spell or the whip, that is probably not playable, but it's really interesting to think about. Like you can do some stuff at instant speed, or if you were to have your creature die, like the black creature over there, then you would discover when the creature dies. But a lot of these are you play the spell and then you get to discover X, 3 or whatever. And generally speaking, you're discovering less than whatever the mana value is for the spell you're playing. So like the red 3/2 there, like discover 3, which is probably going to be a pretty good card, but you're at least not going to hit like a 4-drop or a 5-drop with it. And then the way modern limited is going, even though we said this is maybe boomer limited in some ways, I mean there are a lot of good 1-drops and 2-drops in this set. It looks like so your discover 3 or 4 is not always going to hit a 3-drop or a 4-drop. Oftentimes, if you drafted a certain way, you might have half or more of your cards that cost 1 or 2 mana, and you might just hit one of those, which is not the end of the world or anything, but you're not spending 4 mana to get 7 mana worth of value potentially. So I don't know if that's going to affect the way people like draft their decks or build their decks. You're probably not going to be able to get a high enough density of discover to have that really affect your decisions, but I think it's just interesting to think about. And you can't put the card into your hand if you don't like it. Also, if it's like a counter spell or a combat trick or whatever, which is a quality of life benefit and just a pro compared to Cascade. Sorry, Jason.
I think mostly like what this will mean in terms of deck construction is like if you have a lot of explore, you probably want to put fewer situational cards in your deck to some extent, like specifically counter spells and like combat tricks to some extent, though like combat tricks can still be fine sometimes depending on what kind of combat trick they are. Or things like things that just don't affect the battlefield very much. The power of discover is like you get to like immediately cascade into something that like you can cast, and like you get multiple spells cast that turn, and that's very good. But like if the spell you hit is like the white artifact that like has ETB scry 2, like that's not going to be great, right? Yeah. So there's that. Also, notably, like the common counter spell that they printed in blue, it costs 4 mana, so you're usually not discovering into it. It's like 4 mana, but it costs 2 less if it's targeting a creature. So I think that's very intentional on their part, that you will very often not cascade into that card. So that's neat. But yeah. Also, just like this incentivizes you to play fewer 1-drops specifically. I think like usually 2-drops do fairly well, but like 1-drops cannot sometimes be pretty trinkety. Discovering into like the 1/1 flying vigilance that dies into an explorer is not the most impactful of things, but it's just very small, and I don't think that like you're often going to get enough discover to like care that much about this.
Yeah. I am curious about people's thoughts on the lands, because it feels like there are a good number of 1-drops where you may, if you're very aggro, you may be reticent to put more than one of these in your deck. But I don't know what people think about them, just globally or specifically.
They are a lot of mana to crack. Like it's effectively 6 mana, so that's basically your entire turn. So it feels like it's going to be a thing that like when you open your sealed pool, you're like, oh, awesome, I got 2 caves in my covers. Now we're cooking. Whereas in draft, like there's going to be a lot of games that are going to end before you're going to have a chance to crack your cave.
I could definitely. And they are as a sorcery, which is.
I think that like they work best in like a mid-rangey style of deck where you're just trying to trade off, like just trade 1-for-1 with your opponent a bunch and like have 2-for-1s that like get advantage, and like the caves are just like another thing that do this. It is going to be worse in aggressive decks because tap land is a big cost and you're like not going to get to 6 mana very often in your aggressive decks. Like I'd rather play like different kinds of flood protection, like for example the red 2/2 that rummages every time it gets tapped. Like that card is better flood protection and means that you're gonna get to 6 mana less often as well. So like it's also probably worse in control, just because like pure control decks should be able to like have ways to like get card advantage without using the caves. So yeah.
Okay,
and their sorcery speed,
but
right?
This set blessed us not only with the low amount of removal, but also with low amount of card. There is no Into the Fey court in this set. I mean, there is the draw 3 discard.
Yeah,
one,
I don't think there's going to be a super controlling deck. I think this set plays a lot to the board.
Yeah, we do have Chart Horse though. That one will be good.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that's not like.
But it will be good in control.
Correct. I mean, I will probably play it because I'll have a some flyer or some whatever thing. But even if I have to draw two and just more of a mid-range land, it's whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, Charter Course is definitely more of a mid-range card still. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Amusingly, so you mentioned that mostly all the Discover is like less mana value than the card, right? But there are some exceptions, and a really funny one is the 3 mana red aura that says ETB. It's like +1/+1 trample. It has ETB Discover 3. Theoretically, you can like discover into another copy of itself, which is funny to me. Just the perfect deck is just like 7 mountains, a red 2-drop, and like 20 copies of the Italian's favor. That's not going to happen, of course, but it's funny to think about.
So you have to play the first one on top of opponent's creature, or does it say enchant creature you control?
No. The joke is that you mulligan until you get a hand that has your one creature in it. You play the creature.
But you know, if it's still
they don't have removal. They can just go removal.
It is enchant creature you control, though. Yeah, which is a good point. Yeah. So you have to have certain density of creatures.
They didn't reprint rhinos. Okay, that's good. That's good. We're safe. We're safe from that build around.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess it's going to be Discover generally incidental rather than designing synergies around it, basically. You know.
I hope so. We'll see.
You might want to play with fewer 1-drops if you have plenty of Discover. But on the other hand, if it's a good 1-drop, you get it for free and you move on with your life.
Play things that are impactful. Play things that are like just impactful. That's the main thing. Like you don't want to be playing like air in your deck if you're playing Discover cards.
Yeah, but for example, if I have the Caparocti as my Discover card, I don't mind having that +2/+2/+1 mana combat trick because I'm attacking with Caparocti to activate my Discovery. If I dig into my combat trick, I put it in my hand and I wait for them to block, and I'm happy with that.
Yeah.
So
I think that's the. There's going to be 2 categories of Discover. I feel like there's going to be like those 3 cards in the middle there, which are just like they're gravy. They're already cards that like you're getting probably more mana that you're spending, worth of cardboard on the table. And then there's going to be the clunky ones where it's going to be more questionable whether you're going to get, the mana that you invest. Like Walk the Ancestors, or honestly, the Aura might be like one of those, because like, how happy are you with like +1/+1 and trample if you whiff on your Discover kit?
I think that one's actually good. I think the Aura is good because it is cheap, and like because the Discover amount is for the same amount. Like I think if you hit like a 2/2 with that, you're very happy. The danger is just whether it gets blown out. But as we know, there's no removal in the set.
Yeah.
That is correct. Right, let's move on to Jason's slide.
Great. So fixing. I looked at all the fixing in the set. Not at rare. I did not look at any rares or mythics because if you're relying on that for fixing, like, good job, I guess. I'm sure there's probably something at rare or mythic that like fixes a lot.
Okay.
So this slide is for the bad or more questionable fixing. I think there's a bunch of random like colorless fixing stuff in this set that like I think is kind of questionable. In addition, I think like the green common here that like 3 mana like ramps you and then crafts for 6 mana into a 5/5. You have to craft it with a cave as well, specifically. I think that card's just way too slow. Like crafting it with a cave means that you probably want to activate the cave first. So like you spend 6 mana there and then you spend 6 mana on this. You get a 5/5. It's just so slow. Like maybe it's good, but I don't think you can take turn 3 off just for this.
You can also miss.
yeah, it's also possible to miss. I have missed with Flurifist Vine Wall in the past. It was very sad.
Yeah, I calculated around 2% miss rate on this one.
Yeah, like obviously, you know, it's not going to miss that often. Like 2% is pretty low, but like that is a factor as well. But yeah, so that's bad. Forgotten Monuments also bad. You don't want to play a colorless land in your deck, and you don't want your colorless land to rely on other lands to like actually fix you, like lands that are tapping for mana, right? Like your other caves are already tapping for some color of mana. This just lets them tap for some other color of mana, which isn't good enough. And also on cherry on top, it requires you to pay life in order to like get fixing from those other caves. Like pain lands are painful, as it turns out. So yeah, this is not a great card overall. Like maybe you can make it work in a super heavy caves deck, but I don't imagine those really exist that much. And then Buried Treasure, I wanted to mention. This is a 2 mana artifact that is just a treasure on the battlefield. So like all it can do on the battlefield is sacrifice itself to add a mana of any color. And it has 5, exile it from your graveyard to discover 5 or something like that. I think this is a card that is more of a card that you can sometimes put in your explore and self-mill decks. I don't know how much you should do that, but like I do think that it is maybe something viable in those decks, but it's not fixing really. You don't really want to like spend a whole card to fix. You really don't want to be casting this from your hand, generally, basically.
I mean, I guess you cast it when you accidentally drew it, but you hope to mill it.
Yeah. It's like not ideal, and you shouldn't be like relying on it for your fixing, I don't think. I could be wrong. I think maybe it's possible that like that situation is still good enough because like it's a 1-use Prophetic Prism and the card it drew was like a Discover 5 for 5 mana. I don't think that's good enough, but maybe it is. Who knows? Then there's some okay stuff. There's a Crystal Grotto variant that can sack itself to put counters on something. That's like fine. There's a much worse Evolving Wilds, but like it is a cave. Like both of these are caves, so there's some synergies. But overall, I'm a bit skeptical of the cave synergies, I guess. But like
how
neither
often,
of these are. Yeah.
How often in Lord of the Rings were you happy to have a Shard Terrace in your deck? You were usually.
I didn't play that very much. I think you weren't happy that often. Basically, Evolving Wilds is a card that you'll put in like many 2-color decks to help make your mana better. This is not true of an effect like Promising Vein. Just because like Evolving Wilds, 1 mana is easy to fit like in your curve. 2 mana is a lot more of an ask. So that similarly with I think Captivating Cave is probably better for 2-color decks that like maybe have a light splash somewhere. It's a lot worse than Crystal Grotto. The activated ability is worse than the Scry one, I think, but it's not embarrassing. And then there's some situational cards. I think Compass Gnome is like okay. It's like a Campus Guide variant, but it can find a cave. Which like, you know, if you care about the caves or like if you're going to be a deck that's going long, right? You're not going to play Compass Gnome in an aggro deck really, but like if you have a mid-rangey deck that cares about all of its cards like doing things, like at least Compass Gnome will get you a cave, which will then get you another spell in the future. And then Pit of Offerings, I think. I don't know if it's a sideboard card. I don't know. I don't know how to think of the card, but it's like weird. I mean, the exile 3 from the graveyard can be really powerful against some decks, but obviously it's not great to play on turn 1.
No, I guess this is the kind of a card that you might want to have one in the deck that also have some number of Compass Gnomes and maybe the other one that puts the cave on the battlefield. And you're just praying that you're not going to draw your Pit of Offerings early, because if you play it like turn 4 or 5, especially against a deck that cares about descending, then you probably get decent value out of it. It's like mini Bojuka book, plus it will give you some colored mana. But I guess that all this bad fixing is actually decent that it's bad, because you probably will want to play it when you are on the pod where you had some late cave payoffs and you're just gonna go for it sometimes. And I think that there might be decks that you're gonna do this kind of dirty control deck that has cave payoffs, and maybe with Explore. I guess Compass Gnome is also much better with Explore.
Yeah, I could see that happening. Like if you like, I could see playing a compass, like playing the Compass Gnome, Promising Vein, Captivating Cave kind of package in a like more long game cave payoff deck. I think that's how the cave payoffs will work, but I don't think it looks particularly good to me. I could be wrong, but we'll see. We'll see.
I get the 6 mana 4/4 draws 2 cards is probably decent in this type of deck, and the 8 mana 5/5 lifelinker is probably decent in this type of deck.
Yeah, like I think I think you don't need a 6 mana draw 2 cards in your like splashy control deck. Like yes, it's fine, but like it's not going to be excellent, right? It's going to be like just another card a good card that you can play, not something like that stands out. I think the thing that will make this deck stand out is the sweeper. I think specifically like being able to consistently get like caves in your graveyard, caves on the battlefield for your sweeper will be nice. I'm just slightly skeptical of like that deck coming together that often. Basically, I think it's a lot worse than Gates in like.
Oh yeah, definitely. Because it's also like the Gates were completely different level of fixing, because you just played like all of them and you had all 5 colors all of a sudden, no problem.
Yeah, in this
format,
format,
like the other thing with is like it like works against its own strategy, where like you want to be a late game like big mana kind of deck. And then you don't really need the caves or card advantages then, because like the advantage of like going to the late game is like so that you can play these powerful cards that like continuously generate you card advantage and make up for your like tap lands. So you don't need to be able to pay 6 mana to craft your tap land for Discover 5 or Discover 4. But
yeah. I want to play the Bats thing, but I don't think it's just good enough, because I love this type of card. Like 3 1/1s for 3 mana, get me in. But it won't work, unfortunately, I think.
I think
right,
part of the problem with the Bats is also like you need to have 3 caves on the battlefield as opposed to in your graveyard. Like so
that is a problem. All right, let's move to the good fixing.
The good fixing. So next slide, please. Explore counts, kind of. Explore is inconsistent. Similarly to Mill, it's like inconsistent at this, but it digs you deep. Okay, so it's a bit more consistent than the Mill because it always digs you 1 card deeper into your deck if you're like specifically looking for a card, right? And so all your Explore cards will like dig you deeper into your deck. It'll provide a bit more card draw, basically card filtering, and get you towards your fixing sources more often. So it counts. It's not, obviously you can't just put like Explorer in a 2-color deck and say, oh, I can now splash my 3rd color with no additional help. But like it helps just a bit, right? Beyond that, I think the best fixing in the set is there's like 3 really good colorless uncommons, I think, that are for fixing. First of all, Sunbird standard. I should have put the backside of this on this slide as well, because the backside is super important. But essentially, it's a mana rock that crafts for 5 with some cards in your graveyard, mostly. And then it turns into a vigilant, hasty flyer that taps for mana equal to like 1 of each of the colors that it was crafted with. So like if you can craft it with 2 or 3 colors, it turns into a like hasty 2/2 or 3/3 flyer with vigilance that taps for 2 or 3 mana. And then it's very easy. I think the play pattern is going to be pretty easy to craft with it and then cast a spell with it. And then if your opponent can't remove it, and of course there's no removal in the set, then it's like a really, really good ramp piece, right? Then there's also Scampering Surveyor. It's just a 4-mana 3/2 that ramps you at colorless. I think it also can get a cave or a basic land. So it's just a really good card.
Colorless Organ Hoarder.
Well, it doesn't exactly draw a card, but it like puts a land onto the battlefield, and that land can be a cave, which is more like drawing a card. And like ramping you is also very good. So like even not just like for casting a 6-drop, but just for double spelling the next turn. And then there's the unholy combination of Pickaxe and Carve from Kaldheim, which is Careening Minecart, 3/3 vehicle with crew 1, and when it attacks, you make a treasure. Very good card, I think. Your opponent just has to trade with it, or otherwise, like making a treasure every turn is just really good for you, I think.
And it's weirdly fixing for aggro decks somehow.
Yeah, that's another thing about this, and this is like transitioning a bit into the colored fixing. There's the best, other than the colorless stuff. There's also really good like red fixing in this set at uncommon, specifically in the form of treasures. So there's another Pickaxe this set. It's worse than the pick in Kaldheim because it costs 2 to equip. Slightly better because it's on attacks, I guess, but I think the equip cost is more meaningful. So that's a treasure generation source every turn. Then there's a 2/2 that makes a treasure on your end step if you've descended, which is also another source of fixing. And then there's a 3/2 that comes with a treasure at common. And like everything here, like except the standard, right? The Surveyor, Minecart, Pickaxe, Scallywag, Pirate, all of these point towards more aggressive plans. Funnily enough, all of these kind of want you to attack and trade. Like literally for the Pickaxe and the Minecart, they want you to attack. Scallywag wants you to trade, and the Scarecrow and the Pirate like come with bodies that naturally like trade, right? So they're not going to be worse for like controlling, like really controlling decks, but good for like the kind of 5-color mid-rangey decks that we saw in Eldraine. So I think if there's any like super splashy deck, it'll be like red, somewhat mid-rangey to aggressive kind of deck. I don't know how viable that is, but that's where I think like the like best fixing in the set is.
It's like all of those cards, they just like
the Poison Dart Frog I think is a great card in green. I don't think it's the problem is like the rest of green doesn't have very much good fixing, so like it's probably going to be hard to like actually build a green multicolor deck. But I don't know. I don't know how to feel about the frog. It's like off plan.
Do you think it's better than WoW's Pathfinder?
Yes.
Oh, you didn't play that much LTR. Oh.
But I mean, like WoW's Pathfinder, I think like that's a card that, you know, it gives you a mana sink in the late game. But more importantly, this Dart Frog trades. Like it trades with anything. And Death Touch, you like with all the big toughness stuff, Death Touch gets better as well. So
I can say no to that frog. I'm skeptical of the frog, at least for the start of the format.
Frog.
Maybe like a fixing in some kind of a Naya dinosaurs, because you want to ramp more than fixing.
I was going to ask for the minecart. Are we seeing that probably is just helping facilitate double spells rather than like splashes? Just gives you an extra mana.
All of those cards to me look busted with Captain Storm. Captain Storm and all those cards is just insane.
Yeah, like I think all the 5 cards in the middle here: Surveyor, Minecart, Pickaxe, Scallywag, Pirate. The other thing is that they're just good for facilitating double spells. Like them making treasures or ramping you. Like it's not, you don't need to use it for fixing. Like it can just be good for double spelling. But like think of it as like Red Cap Thief in like Wilds of Eldraine, right? Like a Plundering Pirate is very similar to that card. In fact, right? It just like helps you double spell. At worst case, and like it provides incidental sources of fixing, and it's unclear how relevant those incidental sources of fixing will be, but they do exist.
You know, as I said, I'm high that there will be some sort of Jeskai artifact deck that will use the core of those cards because they fit on the theme in so many ways, and you get some decent payoffs in all the colors, and maybe like red is the center, and then white and blue are adding pieces of synergy to it.
Yeah, and I guess I'll get to this on red slide, but I think red is also kind of shallow, so it's nice that red has more fixing, so it can like splash into other colors and not have to play its like weird commons.
Okay, shall we move to the next slide then?
Sure. White. So I think white is very deep. Like I built a white skeleton, like a white half skeleton, and it had 23 cards in it. So and that's how deep white was. Like just white cards. Like obviously you're not going to get a mono white deck very often, but I think you legitimately can like build a mono white deck. The main thing about white is like at common it just has a lot of like rectangles. It has a lot of cards that are just like good, like just good rate, like For example, the 2-mana 1/2 put a counter on something, or Tinker's Tote we already discussed as like really good, lots of rectangles. 4-mana 3/2 flyer make a 1/1, or like the 1/1 flying vigilance when it dies explore. Like all of these are just like solid rate creatures, or like creature adjacent with Tinker's Tote that like I don't think any of them are like super aggressive, and it's weird because like they kind of promote a go wide strategy, right? Aspirant least of these, but like it still kind of promotes go wide because you can put a counter on something else and leave behind the 1/2, and like the question is how are you using your 1/2, right? But because of this, you have a lot of this like support at common, right, for go wide, but you don't have a lot of payoff. You don't have an inspired charge. There's a 2-mana instant that says like +1/+1, or all your creatures get hexproof, and that's not a very good inspired charge because +1/+1 like is just not impactful enough. If you remember like Ritual of Hope from from Crimson Vow, and that wasn't a card you were particularly interested in. So there's not very much of that at common, but at uncommon there's a bunch of payoffs with like there's the the Deconstruction Hammer is a common, and that's like only slightly a payoff for going wide. But there's the 5-mana 4/3 that has ETB inspired charge, which is like a very, very, very real payoff. Like that card seems like really good to me. And then there's Clay Fired Bricks, which like gets a plains and gains 2 life, and then you can flip it, and it becomes it makes 2 1/1s, and also is a +1/+1 to your whole team, and Anthem, on the back. So it technically makes 2 2/2s and also pumps your team. I think that card's going to be very good, especially because I think like white doesn't look that fast to me. It doesn't look like there's no like 2-mana 3/1 or something like that in white. And like there's no like super aggressive combat tricks. There's like the +1/+3 flying untap card, which like is a good Wings of the Cosmos, whatever. We see this all the time. It's like a good combat trick tempo wise, but like not the most aggressive. It pushes damage late, I guess, but yeah. And then there's like some things that for white that uncommon as well, like the pop here, which is like 3-mana 3/1 flash that like bounces a thing to your hand, just like more value with like Tinker's Tote, etc. Payoff. I think white is just very deep at common it's very deep at common, but I think you need something else to go with it. It's like a very deep support color at common. And you either need the white uncommons or to combine it with something else, because I don't think the 1/1s like quite get there on their own as a game plan. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes. I think that white looks pretty strong as role players for every single archetype that you get, and they need the other color just to add which character you want to add to those, or which role do you want to apply to those. Like again, Tinker's Tote, you can imagine it in white, red, white, black, white, green, and whatever. White green is probably the least pronounced as an archetype, I guess, because it has creatures have more power than base power.
Yeah,
that's not gonna be a thing.
That sign force seems a little trappy.
Maybe a bit more splashy as well, because you want to splash for that like direction, and like white has a lot of like mid-rangey tools that let you survive in the early game, right? Like Tinker's Tote is like actually really good for this, right? It provides some blockers and like some life and some material and like just grindy mid-range stuff.
Okay, I have actually a question to you guys. There's one white card that was not on this thing, and I'm struggling. I might be completely misguided with this card and looking through the rose-tinted classes, but looking at especially those low impact creatures in white, that's the enchantment that every turn gives something +2/+0 and vigilance until end of turn. I think with all the 1/1s. Huh?
Is this a common?
No,
I think it's an uncommon.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I probably didn't include it because it's not a common.
It's like Goblin Battle Shaman or whatever, but in white and as an enchantment, right? Like at the beginning of combat, something gets +2/+0.
Yeah, I thought like a combat professor enchantment. I thought more or less, but it gives +2/+0.
Might of the Ancestors. I was looking it up.
Yeah. I think that card.
Because it doesn't do anything on its own, but if you have like lots of flying around bodies, upgrading your 1/1s to a 3/1 and just pushing it every single turn
But then if
Here's
your
my
opponent
argument
just
against
has a 4 toughness dinosaur,
yeah,
you're very sad.
didn't we? Weren't we just over how like everything in the set has 4 or more toughness or 5 or more toughness?
Yeah,
So
but
you
not
have to
flying
put on a
things.
flyer. Yeah, you
You're-
put on the
you're-
guide
You
wing.
need flyers, yeah.
Your
like-
guide wing, your vampire, the 1/1, even the Ultec cloud guard swinging for 5 every turn. That's pretty decent, I guess.
Sure,
It's
I
like a
could
bone
see
split.
it.
It's bone splitter that re-equips itself every turn. No, it's but you have to pay more upfront, sort of.
But it doesn't work on blocks.
Mm.
It doesn't work on blocks. That's true, but it does give vigilance, so you can later chump with your mini things.
Yeah, I'm like less convinced than you are, I think, but I don't think it's horrible.
I said I'm not convinced. I'm just weirdly appealed by this card, and I don't know if this is my. I know my weaknesses, and one of my weaknesses I like this kind of a card, and I will overrate it. And I'm just asking for opinions. That's why.
This for me is the kind of card that I probably will never put in my deck, but is going to kill me. Like, and then I'll be like, oh, I have to respect this thing a little more because I got chumped to death in the air by a 1/1 flyer that got equipped to 3/1.
Yeah. So my rationale for it is that what was it? The 2/3, was it something Bard in Dungeons and Dragons? Then later they reprinted it in Lord of the Rings, I think. It's a kind of 2/3 that gives +1/+0 to creatures. That card was usually decent, but frequently it was just never involved in any sort of combat because it was too valuable on the board. And this one sort of removes that problem. It's just an enchantment sitting there, and it is definitely aggressive. You don't want to play it when you're behind, but I guess you can build decks where you're continuously ahead. And yeah, with flyers, I think it's like so much better because
I think the body is just like more relevant than you think on this kind of thing.
And also, like I know, Adam, you said that your version of Azorius was like flyer based, so maybe it would go in that. But at least in the skeleton I built was just like Tinker's Totes and craft payoffs and artifact go wide payoffs, right? And you don't want this kind of random enchantment floating around in that. So I mean, there's probably going to be a deck for this kind of thing. I mean, they printed in the sets. They thought that there's going to be.
Yeah, it also is good in enabling your more power than base power.
Okay. Maybe it's not a trap.
Technically,
maybe it's the truth.
Technically, I don't think that this deck exists. Obviously, I built it, but I think I put it only in my flyers because I think it's good with flyers. Shall we move to next color, which is, I guess, black?
No, the next one's blue.
Oh, blue. All right.
Yeah, blue is weird to me. I think it mostly has some good cards on the left. like 2 mana 1/2 Explorer is very good. 3 mana 2/2 flying Windrake that comes with a map is very good. Those are just very good rate. Then it has a very good rate bounce spell that 2 mana bounce a creature. If the creature was tapped, you make a map. It's also very good rate. And then the 4 mana 2/5 with that becomes a 4/5 when you descend 4. I think that is also pretty good. Just because I think 2/5 blocks well, and then if you think of getting to descend 4 on turn 5, then it's a 4/5, and then suddenly it's a very, very real body. Though that one is maybe the worst one out of these 4. But it just has some individually strong cards, and then it also has somewhat of an artifact package on the right there, with Oaken Siren as a mana dork. That's not embarrassing. It has a sleight of hand variant or consider variant that's more mana, but it's a permanent, so it triggers descend more, and it puts things into the graveyard. And the iceberg is a late game threat, which generates value early game as well, which is maybe nice. Still unsure how good that card is, but it seems powerful to me. And then Cogwork, what was it called? Cogwork Brawler or something? Or Cogwork Wrestler. Yeah, just another one of these 1 mana 1/2 flash, give something -2/-0 when it enters. That's actually a pretty good effect. And this is the specific card I wanted to talk about with the explore creatures, right? If you play a 2 mana 1/2 explore and you draw a land, right? It's not going to perform in combat that well, right? Because 1/2 doesn't do that much compared to a 2/3. But now that you have this 1/2 on the battlefield, right, having like another thing like this Cogwork Brawler in your hand like can help you like actually interact well in combat, because like you flash it in and then you double block, and suddenly you have 2 power and 4 toughness across your blocks that like that'll eat a 2/2, it'll eat a 3/2 even, it'll trade a 1/2 for a 4/2, like that. It like having these random bodies on the battlefield makes Cogwork Wrestler better, because Cogwork Wrestler is just like another random body on the battlefield. So I think it works pretty well with the Explore stuff when you happen to like not get the counter on the Explore, or even when you do, but just like it helps make them not embarrassing when you don't get the counter.
Yeah.
And also aligns perfectly with like when you don't get the counter and you draw cards, so you can more afford to spend a card on this like cheap interaction thing. Yeah.
You didn't put the aura that gives -X, -O, and mills too. You think that this card might be something, or?
No, I mean,
Not
do you
even
remember
into
Fear of
Mirror?
Death? Or whatever it's called, or is
Yeah,
that
well,
what this card's called? I don't know.
Yeah,
There
that
was
was
a
a-
version of Midnight Hunt. Was it?
Yes,
I don't
there
know.
was something called Fear of Death, but I think this is very similar. What is it called?
It's basically like so tiny or whatever things that there are always things like that flying. I
So
think
the
it's
thing
just
that's
like
so tiny was that it had flash, so that you could use it as a combat trick. Right? I'm pretty sure it had flash at least. Whereas, and also because blue was winning by milling in that set, like blue very often killed your opponent by milling in like original Eldraine. Whereas here, like the problem with this kind of removal, where it just gives the creature -X, -O, is that they still have the blocker. They can either chump with it, or God forbid, if you put it on a 6/6, they have a 0/6 now that they can block with, and it like stymies your it stymies your attacks, right? So you either need to be having like flyers in the air that you're winning with, which like you have a bit of with the Windrake, but like not that much, or you need to like be milling them or something, which like isn't really a realistic thing. So I think it's just not good enough.
all right. Let's move to black, which is very deep, which is good in a cave, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. I think mostly just every single card, every single common in black looks like it's like just good. I don't know how else to explain this, but just like there's a lot of cheap tempo cards and a lot of cheap 1.5 or 2 for ones common, and like it's all the cards seem really good, synergistic with each other. I didn't even realize that Tithing Blade was a common at first. Shout outs to the set symbol, but like I
thought it was an uncommon.
Yeah, like you just have a 2-mana edict that like turns into an actual threat. Like the backside is Dogged Pursuit or whatever, like every turn you drain your opponent from 1, and that's not a card that you would like play just for itself, right? You wouldn't just play like Dogged Pursuit in the past has been a pretty bad card, though
it was the worst common in the set.
Yeah.
Valheim.
But like when it comes stapled to another card, like yes, you just get it for free. It's like actually a decent threat. Like
it's when you staple it to another not so playable card in an edict. I get what you're meaning, but
the edict isn't
yeah.
unplayable though, because like the edict also comes with a like thing, right? Like it comes with a thing that you can then sack to like maybe the edict is worth 0.5 of a card and the like artifact is worth 0.5 of a card, and you now have a full card for 2 mana.
Yeah, no. I totally get it. I mean, I again, Preening Champion is a Windrake, and it has a stapled 1/1 crapper, and all of a sudden, this is like the best common that we've ever seen. No?
Well, a body is probably worth more than just like this random artifact on the battlefield. But there's just in this set, there's so much stuff to do with it, right?
I see that card right below it that looks really good with random artifacts on the battlefield.
Although I would rather combine it with the Mephitic Drought, but that's just me. Draw more.
I think Mephitic Drought is probably going to be worse than Tithing Blade, because I think when you're doing stuff like this, you want to be affecting the battlefield more than you want to just be drawing pure cards. I think you can get the pure cards in other ways. Maybe I'm wrong, but
draw more cards. That's the way to win games. Just draw more.
I mean, yeah, Tithing Blade is not Shambling Ghast, but it might be pseudo Shambling Ghast in some decks where you sack it after it's done what it needs to do to draw some cards. Like
there's already a Shambling Ghast in this set, though,
You're
right?
kind of is. It doesn't get -1/-1 though, but it can ramp you, which is nice.
Well, -1/-1 wouldn't do anything because there's no creatures with 1 toughness. So
I
they just didn't give you that roll.
I know. I just waited a lot of attacks with Shambling Ghast back in the day.
Yeah. As we all know, this set is full of no removal, no creatures with 1 toughness, and every creature has 5 or more toughness. That's
how it is. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
the
that's
edict
by-
person-
And by every, I mean we mean 17% of them.
Yeah.
So
Unless your
everyone
opponent
in
plays-
6. Everyone in 6, and they are mainly cycled to get a planes.
Unless your opponent plays the tote on turn 3, and then you're very sad looking at your edict. But we won't tell people about the tote. People will think the tote's unplayable, and we'll play all the totes.
Yeah, no, I mean, the
This
thing is, like, I would agree more if, like, Tithing Blade wasn't something I was excited to play on turn 2, right? Because, like, turn 2, as it turns out, is before turn 3. So your opponent won't have
Taking on
played
the
the
draw.
turn.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think, like, there are some things that will punish you for, like, playing Tithing Blade, but, like, even just, like, you know, getting rid of their 1/1, like, it's not going to be that impactful, but it's going to do something.
I don't know, I'm reminded of Carl when he was talking in a recent episode about cards that probably will play better on the draw than the play because it's maybe a way to like steal the draw from someone. I mean, I'm not a big edict person, but with as good as the 1-drops and 2-drops do look in this set, in some colors, like this could play up a little more than it might have in some slower sets. So I don't know.
Yeah, you kill the 1/1 that explores before they hit the second body, and
Correct, yeah. Lost value.
Yeah.
you feel like a winner.
Yeah.
And then you might drain them for 1 every turn.
Yeah.
Sometime.
Yeah, I don't know. I just think black looks incredible this set. Just a lot of deep commons. There's like I think maybe 3 of black commons. Like there's maybe like 3 or 4 black commons that I don't like, and like there's plenty of black commons I didn't put on this slide. So I don't know. And to answer chat, yes, I am counting Mill 2 as half of a card. And I think a 1/1 Death Touch is a full card in this set. Like I don't know. I think turning on your Descend early is pretty nice. For example, your Echo of Dusk becoming a 3/3 lifelink is very, very good. So
Yeah, 3/3 lifelinker is better than the 2/2 vanilla, I would say. I'm not an expert in this, but Echo Dusk looks pretty busted if you can get it to the threshold, and I think that Death Cup Marionette is going to be the easiest way to do it. No? What do you think about the 3-mana 1/4 that sacrifices a creature or artifact to drain 1?
it reads somewhat like Vampire Spawn. I'm less excited about it now that I've heard that there's 0 X1s in the set, like actually 0, right? That's what we concluded. But
Yeah, no. There's not a single one. And if they do, they have Death Touch.
yeah. So I'm less excited about it now, I guess. But like, it just feels like there's going to be a lot of things that you can like sacrifice for like free-ish. Maybe it's not that good, but I think it's like not that bad. It reminds me of Gluttonous Guest.
But by the way, I mean, on top of not having any removal and not having any card draw, it also doesn't have any threaten effects.
Yeah, actually 0 this time, right? I think
This is
it's
an actual 0. This is not a hyperbolic 0.
yeah. I agree. There's no threatened effects.
I mean,
but,
they
like,
would have been super busted with
I don't know, just looking at black
4 or
is-
5 0-mana sacrifice effects, but still, it's a first set, and I don't know how long that doesn't have any kind of threaten effect.
That is very notable, right?
Yeah, they put the Apple last set to have 2 of them without any sacrifice outlets, and now they have 0 threatens and many sacrifice outlets. I guess they're trying new things. Join the Dead. You said it's bad that it's got 2 black pips. I said it's good that it has 2 black pips.
It won't get splashed as much. People won't steal it from you.
Exactly.
Well,
That's why I
sorry,
think
not-
that.
when I was saying that it's bad that it has 2 black pips, it's because I can't splash it, and B, it means that like people who are in black will be more deeply in black, and black will be like even more like I think powerful because of that.
Yeah, play more frogs. That's my advice.
Well,
More
even, like,
frogs. More
You can
frogs.
build your own like murder with the frog because there's the Huatli's Strike, which is like a bite, and so if you have a 5 mana instant, I think it's instant.
It is an
It
instant.
is. It is. Yeah.
So that's
5 mana
nice.
is a lot of mana.
5 mana is a lot of mana, but I mean, in this set, there's 0 removal, so you need to pay what you got to pay.
Yeah, exactly.
That is correct. Okay, let's move to the next color,
Yep, red.
which is red, which is not
I think
deep.
red has like 3, like 4 good cards, maybe. I don't know. Like the cards on this slide are like decent at common, but like obviously it has a braid, it has Goblin Guide, just your 1 mana 2/2 haste. Well, you need an artifact for it to be a 2/2 haste. I think other people are higher on the Goblin than I am, but like I recognize it's a very powerful card. And then
You always
Atali's
have an
favorite.
artifact, no? That's just
Yeah, always. Yeah.
that's how it goes.
I recognize Atali's favor is also like pretty powerful. Like Discover 3, like I said, Discover 3 on the 3 mana thing is pretty powerful. It can get blown out, but there's no removal, so it's fine. Plundering Pirate, also just powerful card. 3/2 Red Cap Thief is probably better than Red Cap Thief. But like other than like these cards, red feels kind of shallow. And like there's things that like enable the Goblin Tomb Raider, which is nice. And like I think the 2/2 is pretty good as well, but I don't know. Red just seems kind of shallow to me. And it's nice that, like I said before, it's nice that it has that treasure stuff so that it can like splash into other colors instead of relying on the red commons, because I just don't really like the red commons that much.
That's a good question from the chat. You didn't include the torch as a good card.
The torch,
The Sunfire Torch, the equipment that gives +1/+0,
I don't
and you
think
can
so.
sacrifice it to pink for 2/2. Any target that can go face.
So like the thing about that card is I don't want to have a like 1 mana equipment that equips for 1 and gives +1/+0. That does not seem like a good thing to me. Like that's not a good card. And I also don't want to pay 2 mana and have to attack to get my shock. So like
There's one board shock too that they know about.
Yeah.
A shock that descends. No, they don't need to know it. You have to you play it and you equip it and you attack and then boom. They didn't know it before
yes,
the turn.
the joke is that it descends.
Mana.
But I think that like it's just so much worse than
clunky.
like it's so it's just so clunky. Like neither side is particularly good, and they don't add up that well either. Like if I want to shock, I want to keep my equipment around so my creature continues to like attack for more. And like +1/+0 is just so small. I
mean, but if there's no removal, as we established, then the 1 removal spell might be really good.
Well, I'd rather have a braid. I don't know.
Well, yeah, I'd rather have the best common in the color than this clunky thing that I'm trying.
And it's
to
that
make
deep
it.
level of analysis that
I'm
you're
joking.
here
I
for.
think it is like a D+ card.
Like consider instead of spending 2 mana at sorcery speed, I'd rather just spend 3 mana at instant speed and keep around the artifact and have something I can cast with. I don't know. Like, just seems really bad to me.
For what it's worth, I do like the Volatile Wonder Glyph. I think the card is gonna be better than.
No, I think the card is good. I just think it's like nothing too special.
Yeah, but there's several easy cards that you can add to your deck where you can tap them without putting them in combat situations to fix your draws and fill in your graveyard, and especially like because I was thinking about it more like a white-red thing, but I guess that this plus the 1/3 that pinks for 1 can be also used for your deck that is black-red for making sure that every single turn you can descend and get your bonuses on your crappy 3/3 menace creature, make it a 4/4 or something.
Yeah, I do think the Wonder Glyph is strong. I just think that like red just doesn't have very much to offer. So generally like what you want from a color at common is like you want some strong commons, and then you want some like okay commons, and then like there's some stuff at the bottom that's trash, right? I just think red is missing that middle okay stuff, right? Like there's no like there's a lot of just random commons that are like that look kind of bad. I don't know, like the Land Cycler looks pretty bad. I guess the 4 mana removal spell is okay, but like there's like a 3/1 haste that looks pretty bad. There's I don't know. There's just a bunch of stuff that just
there is no X1 hate, so that's fine. It's like a 3/3
I mean,
basically.
it's great for your opponent's, like half of your opponent's turn, 1/3 of your opponent's turn.
You can always put a Tally's favor on it, and much better all of a sudden. Yeah, that's true. And I also think that the big miss is that, okay, there is the 2-drop for dinosaurs that is gonna be probably pretty good if you have a lot of dinosaurs. But
Yeah,
on
but
the
it's
other
hard
hand,
to
there is no good
specifically
red
rank
dinosaurs. There's no good red dinosaurs at common. There is the 4 mana 4/3, and that's
You have to
about
be
it.
red-green for that, definitely.
That's the
Basically.
other thing about like the synergies in this set is that there's like all these overlapping synergies where we're talking already about like, okay, there's Jeskai artifacts, and then there's sort of like Mardu descended this turn, there's Sultai descend, and then just kind of off in a corner doing its own thing is just Gruul dinosaurs, right? And so I wonder how much like if you're like the one dinosaurs drafter on the table, you just like you're getting all of these like dinosaur payoffs and no one's taking your goodies, whereas like people might be fighting over like some of these other more like crossover archetype synergy pieces.
I think it'd be good if you're the one drafter in that color. You will not be good if you were the second drafter in that color.
Sure. And I think probably people are going to want to draft dinosaurs in the dinosaur set.
At least the first couple weeks. Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see.
I don't know. People have been talking a lot about comparing dinosaurs to red-green werewolves and Midnight Hunt, and like saying like, did they finally fix the red-green werewolves problem from Midnight Hunt? We'll see.
Yeah, they did
we'll
by
see
not putting removal. Not putting removal and not putting definitely a 1 mana artifact that deals 3 damage to any target, unless it's a dinosaur where it deals million damage. That will help. Okay, and then the last we have green.
Green.
Which has a frog.
Green is the color of dinosaurs and also a frog. So the thing about dinosaurs in green is like, I feel like a lot of the best cards are dinosaurs, and just like kind of incidentally, like specifically the extra, I guess, in this land cycler are what I'm thinking about. Like the extra 4 mana 4/3 explorer is just a good card, and that gives you an incidental dinosaur, and then the like land cycler also just seems like a decent card to me, just on rate, and that's also randomly a dinosaur, so that makes your kin caller better as well. The 3 mana 3/3, and it often will just gain 3 life because you get to reveal a dino from your hand. So that's interesting to me. And like the frog is also interesting to me, but like I said with the fixing, I don't know how much it'll pan out. And then there's just like some graveyard like descent, like explore descend stuff. I don't know how much I like the capybara, but I do like the 3 mana 3/1 vigilance that explores, like no X1 hate, right? And makes it better. And also one thing I was thinking about, I don't know how much this will pan out, but like specifically walk with the ancestors seems like a decently powerful card to me. So it's a 5 mana rebuy something, a permanent card from your graveyard, discover 4. And specifically what I'm thinking of is what happens if you cycle your forest cycler on turn 2, right? Or like early game, you cycle it, get a forest, and that lets you hit your 5th land drop, which lets you walk with the ancestors to return that land cycler to your hand and also cascade, or like also explore for 4, right? And that could maybe be something powerful. I don't know whether it's actually good, but like I can imagine green playing out in a very like grindy mid-range way this way. I think the main weakness. Yeah, sorry.
I missed the moment where you played frog in that game sequence.
Set it up a turn.
You played on turn 2.
Okay.
You cycle your land cycler on turn 3 and play another.
And you still have mana to give death touch. That's a good one.
Yeah, exactly. And then you can walk with the ancestors on turn 4.
We all know.
I'm not trying to justify a whole color just for this frog. In fact, I think the weakest part of green is its 2-drop slot. I like the frog, but I don't like anything else at 2-drop really. Like maybe the capybara. Like the thing is, I think the other colors all tend to have better cheap cards than expensive cards, and green seems to be the other way around. So I'm hopeful that green can slot into like other colors by having the other colors provide your early stuff and have green provide more late game. But I don't know how much I believe that.
One card that is missing for me in the slide is the Huatli's final strike. It looks
Yeah, it's removals, whatever. It doesn't exist. I don't know.
decent.
I think removal's fine.
I think the Mineshaft Spider is also pretty good in the deck that
Mm.
wants a mill 2 effect. 4 mana,
Yeah,
3/4,
yeah, I think that
dust
card
things
could be
is
good.
good. It's just
Yeah,
it's
no,
not.
I think that card is
it's
solid.
an expensive one though. No, you
So,
don't
But
think
like
that.
that doesn't solve. That still doesn't solve like the green problem of like what are your 2-drops? What
There's
is your
also
Staggering
that,
size. That's your 2-drop. Staggering size. The
Oh, that's one way to give
3/3
something
trample.
trample. There's also the cat, right? There's this cat that whenever it attacks, it gives something trample.
Yeah,
that's a-
Sure, but like that doesn't work very well. I don't think that works very well with the rest of the stuff that green has, because like your problem isn't like, oh, how do I beat? Like the cat doesn't let you beat down very much because you just don't have other good aggressive tools other than the +3/+3 trick. I think the cat can maybe work in a like aggressive dinos build, but like it doesn't. It's not like a defensive 2 that gets you to your expensive stuff.
No, it's a bear on defense. Yeah.
I think it'll have a role though, because if we have these 1/1 artifact gnomes that are just going to be chump blocking our 5/5s or whatever, I don't know. It might have a role potentially. Yeah, to help with
I don't know.
racing.
I'm not that worried about getting jump blocked personally, but yeah.
I guess that green has decent rares, and I guess that's gonna be what's gonna draw you into the color. There are some bangers there, I guess.
Before we get to deck shells, I know we've joked about removal, but honestly, it seems like you might have to pick the removal that is out there that's actually pretty good, higher than we might normally pick it. Like the Watley's first strike or last strike or whatever it was, like that will probably have to have an alpha that is 1 to 2 picks higher than we might normally see it because there's just no removal. I don't know what people think about that because I mean you have to have some interaction in your deck. You can't just jam all
I
creatures.
mean, people will always pick removal too high as well. So, like,
Yeah, that's
And there's some like clunkier removal options that are probably going to turn out to be pretty decent. There's like what is like the quicksand 6-mana white quicksand like exile a creature, I think. But like it's like costs less if it's tapped. So that might be there's that card like Banish from Edoras that ended up being playable in Lord of the Rings. If you really need removal to get your opponent's bomb out of the way.
Yep. Triggers Beanstalk.
Modern playable confirmed.
True.
It's basically Leyline Binding, but
Leyline Binding at home. There you go.
Very much at home.
That doesn't trigger Descent though, so that's the problem.
Well,
okay.
speaking of triggering Descend, there's the Boulder. If you want something that triggers Descend, the Runaway Boulder sure does it.
I think that Runaway Boulder may be arguably playable in a deck that plans to live longer and also wants Descent and also has some things on board. I think it's going to be playable. It's not going to be that you're going to be thrilled to play it. It's not a braid. It's not even a B braid. It's not even a C braid. It's probably a D braid, but kills everything. Apart from 2 of them, and you get Galta.
Yeah. Just spend 12 mana. Yeah.
That's very
well. They
flavorful.
played Galta, so I assume that you have 12 mana by then. Right. I think it's time. We got this very, very broad introduction of the format. It's time to dive into our creations, and it's going to be a lot of switching between screens, so bear with me. We have built, but maybe not linked necessarily, a bunch of skeletons. As I described earlier, these are the semi-realistic versions of decks that have 6 to 8 uncommons most of the time, 1, 2 rares most of the time, and the rest is filled with commons. We try to keep it realistic, so you don't put 5 copies of a braid in your decks. We try to make sure that this looks like something that you might have drafted at some stage. And some of them will be trying to show what is the best in particular color combination. Some of them will be trying to show what we think the design team wants us to build. That does not necessarily mean that this is the best thing that you can be building. Sometimes we'll get our own theoretical idea that we want to showcase, and we will use a particular skeleton to showcase them. So yeah, Let's start with Azorius, and who wants to talk about Azorius? Maybe you, Adam?
Yeah, sure. I'll start us off. I did not follow Wizard's advice. This is not a craft focused blue-white deck. This is Boomer Magic, blue-white skies, as Richard Garfield intended. So
Okay, again, I need to move between screens.
yeah. I'll look for it to come up. Yeah, if you want to, and split it out. So I will say, I think there's a reasonable number of good one drops in the set, and I think blue and white both have some of them, and it's kind of nice when many of them have evasion. You'll see 3 of those one drops have evasion, so they'll wear +1/+1 counters pretty well, whether it's from the what's the aspirant, the 2-drop in white.
Yeah.
So that's nice to either make itself a 2/3, which is already above rate, or make a 2/2 flyer. And it can be a 1/2 that you can do something with.
Can be even the 2/2 lifelinker.
It can
flyer.
be, yeah. Lifelink, vigilance, you get all the stats you want on those. And then from there, you have 3-drop flyer, 4-drop flyer that bring along another piece of cardboard, whether it's a map token or a 1/1. So up the curve, you're doing stuff that is reasonably statted that comes with additional cardboard in many places. And then you try and support that with interaction, whether it's 2 mana bounce, 2 mana arrest, 1 mana bone splinters. You can use your map tokens, your whatever for that. And then you try and maintain some velocity with chart the course, or potentially you can put these equipments. I put 2 equipment in here. One of them is just the hammer, acknowledging there may be some other artifacts that are useful, and it's good on a flyer. I mean, this isn't Battlefield Raptor and Pick from Kaldheim, but this can still probably make something tougher to kill with the no removal spells that exist in the format, and just push some damage. And then the hat, it was card 23 because I thought it'd be cute to do some looting and put it on a flyer, and have a use for these extra lands you draw, because ideally you're getting to 4 or 5 lands and just kind of sticking there. And then the final, Jason mentioned earlier, the 4/3 that gives your whole team +2/+1 should work well with the multiple 1/1s that came from the 4-drop ahead of it, or just your flyers that they probably can't block. And yeah, just get them dead by turn 6. This did start as a craft deck, and I think somebody else, maybe it's Zach or someone else, does have a craft focused deck. So I don't even know if the Signpost Uncommon even belongs in this, but I felt like we're making some incidental artifacts. So maybe it just ends up being okay, but it very easily could just be too high of a curve and get cut for another 1-drop or 2-drop.
Yeah, that's the issue with the mural, is that once you craft it, you want to have more stuff, more ways to make artifacts, because that's how you keep on making 4/4s on the backside. So
there's some ways. We have the 4-drop and the 3-drop that each make a map or a 1/1 gnomes. Those will
nice.
rocket, and then the 2-drop bounce spell. I mean, ideally you can use it. You can even use it on your own creature if you want to have something tapped to kind of use the ability from the backside of the mural. Not saying you always want to do that, but I mean, there are some decent ETBs for these creatures, so it's an option potentially if you had to get kind of fancy. So
yeah, it looks almost identical with my build, so I'm not gonna bother.
Yeah, it is fairly streamlined, minus the weird 5-drop gold card.
Yeah, I didn't put that one because
cards very powerful.
I did put I did put the make something into a 5/4 because I thought it works well with the 1/1 flyers as a finisher.
Yeah, that seems. I almost put the make an artifact into a creature, and you get to discover after, because I was like, there's probably enough artifacts here, but I don't know. These are all around the edges types of changes. It feels like.
Yeah, I thought I put it, I think, in the red version because treasures are good for that.
Makes a ton of sense. Yeah.
Okay, we can look at the different take on that in Zach's version.
Yeah, mine is much more grindy, mid-range, and I'm looking at there's the number of creatures are much lower too, but you do have 2 totes, and a lot of like removal. So this set of course doesn't have removal, but this kind of deck I feel like gets the most out of something like Cosmium Blast or whatever. And you're kind of expecting to play from behind, but you are putting a bunch of permanents onto the battlefield. You're like, you want to trigger all your stuff, and then once you get your payoffs, then you like start going over the top, and you should be able to like, make a 4/4 every turn. Abuelo seems very good in this deck because like everything that flickers produces more value. So like, is this going to be a deck that's going to be perhaps possible to assemble and draft? Like, yeah, I kind of like this companion because like, what is it? It produces a map token, right? So like that's 2 artifacts that's entering the battlefield for 3 mana, and like
it is 3 versus the 4 we saw in Bro to get 2 artifacts, so that is nice.
So like, yeah, this is much more controlling. But like the density
what's hiding here.
Well, that's the thing, is that you need to have like, your options of removal. I think I do have like I'm not sure. Maybe I didn't put the clunky 6 mana removal spell in here, but you need to have answers for stuff because you're expecting to go into the late game. So this boulder actually does answer stuff, and eventually you'll have the mana to produce it. You have clay fired bricks and things. So like, this is like, I feel like, I mean, there are a lot of uncommons and rares in this. So, but this is like the the version of the deck that I think Wizards kind of was pushing us to create. The really into artifacts and crafting.
Yeah, you definitely want to be deeper into artifacts if you want to play the Master's Guide mural. And obviously, like Thousand Moon Smithy is probably one of the better bombs in the format when you can. I mean, it requires a certain amount of building around, but if you can make it, then it's going to be game ending very quickly.
I mean, I think you could draft this set. Like, I feel like some of the cards that were in mine might be recognized as just stronger cards, like typically stronger cards, and they might get picked up. But I don't know who's going to take your companions or some of these like 1-drop artifacts that you have. So I mean, you can probably count on wheeling many of these cards if you can take some of the uncommons or the higher power cards or earlier. So I don't know, it could happen.
I mean, I am high on Market Gnome. Like, this card seems like everything that this deck wants to do. It's a 0/3, so it blocks, and it like when it dies, you get a card, and you're going to trade off eventually. And then you're going to eventually craft it with something, and you're going to get even more value.
So you don't get
only you only get value when you craft it from the battlefield.
Yeah, that.
Okay, so you don't get the 3-for-1. Okay.
Yeah, it's not a 3-for-1, but it is a 2-for-1.
Okay, all right. Well, a boy can dream. I guess that you might call that a paper only play.
You may call it incorrect play, but
all right. So I think that's basically what this archetype is. The adaptive gem guard, that's like, that's the 4 mana guy that like when you tap other artifacts you have lying around, you put counters on it. I figure that I had enough like little dirtily guys that are going to be sitting on the battlefield that maybe that could be something that's like worth doing.
I think like it is almost certainly going in this deck is almost certainly going to be a 4 mana 4/4 just straight up. Well, I guess it like dies to a braid, but like it already dies to a braid.
There's no candy grapple. There's no
Yeah, so like it's just gonna be a 4 mana 4/4. Like Ben grows every turn after that as well, and like you can pretty often like grow it quicker than that too. So it's just a big beater, and like maybe that's good. There's no removal after all.
At least we'll keep you up with the more dumb dinosaur kind of strategies, because you can make it into something that will be able to block a 6/6 dino or something.
I will say the nice thing, we have almost no cards that overlap. But like we have some of the flyers that are just clearly like 2-for-1s.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, you could potentially have both of these decks at a table and they get along very well, and they can both be drafted. which kind of does speak to the ability to maybe be artifact heavy crafting like they wanted versus a more different type of version.
I wonder if this, like, at least the kind of deck that I'm theory crafting here, it feels like the Azorius deck in one, right? Where it's just like you wanted your artifact count to just be as dense as possible. And like, that's one way to brew this deck. And then there's also like the Skies deck that kind of cares, less at all about artifacts in general. So, anyways, that I think is basically this build. If we want to like, if I can sum up Azorius in anything, I think, I don't know. I think I'm pretty high on like both of these builds or these both versions of the decks. I feel like Azorius kind of has like a pretty big glow up from WoW, where it was kind of this ugly stepchild of kind of failed limited archetype. I think what Wizards is telling us to do is good, and then like also the blue and white are deep enough that you can probably find other builds that are going to be functional.
Yeah, I think that there is a tempo deck and there is this more grindy artifact version, possibly Jeskai. Okay, let's move on to the Demir. I put mine, and again, I didn't know exactly what I want to achieve with the Demir. I assume that there is going to be Descended 4 as an important mechanic. I put 2 of the Frilled Cave Worms. I think that these are going to be my most stabilizing kind of thing. And then potentially the turning of the corner kind of thing. I put some more aggressive early stuff. I could have gone for the Death Touchers that mill. And probably I should replace those Songs of Stupefaction with the Death Touchers that mill, because they are very similar in what they want to achieve. And I guess the 1/1 Death Touch is slightly better than an aura that sits on something. Echoes of Dusks, these are again things that I can trade off early if I want to trade off early, or if I have to trade off early. Hopefully not with the dead weights. I can deal with the creatures in a different way. But later they become 3/3 lifelinkers. They can even become attackers, but most likely they can keep my life total to at the level where I'm happy with it. I like the Waterlogged Hulk as a sort of finisher. That's the 1-mana artifact that taps to mill a card. It will fuel my descent. Well, not rapidly, but I'm not planning to kill very quickly. And then I can flip it, and it becomes this vehicle with crew 1, which is cheap. It's a 4/4 vigilance, and when I have descent 8, it becomes unblockable. So that's like the way to finish the game. Because I'm playing a longer game, I can assume that this is going to become unblockable at some stage. And being a vehicle, it's exposed to very little removal, because lots of the things that can kill it are sorcery speed, and then it's not a creature. Arguably, the black removal for 5 mana can kill a vehicle as well, I guess. But okay, that's the thing. I have the Chupacabra's Echo because I am fueling my graveyard. River Herald Scouts are either helping me to stay with my mana because I can be a bit mana hungry, but also they can be a 2/3, which is a very good early blocker. I said deadweights are decent, and fueling descent and then dealing with the aggressive decks. I put this Oraska puzzle door that also fuels descent and gives me some kind of card selection. And yeah, it very well fuels the descent. What else do we have here? I put one of those. I don't know exactly how good it is. I just think that most of the time it will be a 3/2 flyer. Ich bin back is good because in this particular deck, I don't necessarily need to draw it. I can just mill it and it will just come back. So as a free sort of card. And if I draw it, I can play it. 5 mana, 6/4 is good enough. Menace will probably mean that trades 2 for 1 because 6 power will most likely kill both of the blockers if I play it right. I somehow like this card, and I don't know if I'm right about it. It's a 1/3 Death Toucher. When I have Descent 4, it will draw a card at this attack, which will motivate my opponent to block it. Definitely. Hopefully, I can clear the path for it with my removal. I am not sure. I think that this deck still needs some additional things, especially when it comes to card draw. I thought that I can get the extra value from the hidden cataracts and hidden necropolis to sort of discover my things. But I guess like the good card to play in it would be also the thing that mills 2 cards and returns 2 creatures from graveyard to hand. I do have an atrocious bomb, which hopefully will seal the deal. Yeah, it's gonna probably take some time to build a good version of blue-black in this format. If it's even possible, because I think that weirdly, I think blue does not fit that particularly well with this long game in this format. So I'm not sure if Demir is going to be best thing to do in the first days. I'm pretty sure it's not going to be. But there is some potential there. I just will need to select the exact right cards that work the best in order to quickly allow you to descend 4, because I think that descending 4 is the name of the game here, because things like Echo of Dusk, they really need to have those 4 permanents in your graveyard, which also limits the amount of spells that you will play. I mean, as you can see, I only have 2 spells that are not permanents, and that's Join the Dead and Bitter Triumph. Both of them are really good removal spells.
There's one card that I find kind of notably absent here, which is Sage of Days, which is the 3-drop that like mills, but like you can put one on top. That seems like kind of what you want in these kind of like stock your yard demure decks. Cause like that will help you like hit descend 4. It will help you hit like for some of these payoffs you need descend 8. I guess that's more like Golgari. There's some of those, but that's like I think a fine, maybe not super exciting, but this is like the home for it 3-drop.
Yeah, it's basically like that flashback spell from Midnight Hunt, but on a stick that is a 3/2, which I guess it's a pretty decent value. Yeah, I think Arsenal is right that there is some graveyard hate at common, and it can be a problem for that deck if you are going too much into the descent strategy. And I think that this blue-black still can have this sort of like flying tempo kind of deck, because there is a bunch of blue flyers that are quite aggressively statted. There is the black flyer that mills every time it attacks.
Yeah, I did that. I didn't do descend at all in mine. I figured it just wasn't gonna be juice worth the squeeze. Maybe it is, but
well, I have to say, I think that it will be worth the squeeze if like 36 cards in your deck are descent fodder, and you can basically
I descend in green black. Like I lean into a little more there. I just wasn't sure if it was quite worth it. In this one, it may be.
It may be the great mistake. Yeah,
but you want like stuff that like it gives you value from your graveyard, and like I guess the signpost does that. There is this kind of random spell with flashback in blue, like I think it's 6 mana or something, makes a copy. That's like something that you can put in your yard and get value from when you mill, although it's not a permanent, so it doesn't really help for descend itself. So that's some tension. There is kind of a lack of like stuff that really provides you value when you mill it. If we're not talking about like craft fodder. Like the payoff is the descend cards.
Yeah. Right. What do we have in terms of Rakdos? Rakdos, small game by Adam. So let me just swap it. Yeah, I'm curious how Dimir is going to work.
I did put some other archetypes in there that I think if you like refresh the page, you'll see. But like, I made
I can't refresh it
Rakdos.
now. I'm not refreshing it. No, wait, because I can actually because I'm not. Am I sharing? No, I'm not sharing this slide. Okay, good. Maybe I can.
But like, if there's something like really notable in our difference in our builds, then I'll bring it up.
Yeah,
But,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Otherwise, we can just run with what we got.
We have the okay. We have
Yeah,
it.
This should just be Rakdos 2-drops, probably. but yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the so obviously these are colors that are going to actually give you the removal that does exist in the set. So it's figuring out how best can you leverage that, and if you're playing ways to either like take cards from their hand with cards like the Skull Cap Snail, or the Deep Cavern Bat, plus fairly well cost removal if you can get a Braid, if you can get dead weight, join the dead, then ideally you have some threat. Maybe it's just a a 3/2 or a 2/2, whatever, that can get in some damage. You can keep their board relatively clear, and you just try and play a small game and get your 1.5 for ones, 2 for ones. The curve stops at 4, but the 4-drops are a 2 for 1 in the Geological Appraiser, a 2 for 1 in the Chupacabra Echo, this Mycoid that if you're trying to play a small game, you're trading off some stuff, might give you some 1/1s that eventually, when their board only has like 0 to 2 creatures, might be able to get in for some damage. So it's nothing super crazy, but it is just trying to double spell as soon as turn 3, turn 4, and try and take the resources out so your little guys can do some stuff.
I'm wondering. There is this 2-mana aura that gives +2/+0 and then basically returns the creature back from the graveyard.
I thought about that. I didn't have great like some of the ETBs obviously like the appraise, the 4-drop, the Echo and the Appraiser obviously would be pretty good for that, and the discard card would be pretty good. But
Snails. I mean,
Snail's pretty good. Yeah, you build your own Rakdos scam.
Yeah. You more or less. Yeah, this is basically Grief, right? Yeah.
It's practically
better than Grief because it exiles.
Oh yeah. They don't get their descend. They don't get descend 4 or anything. It's big.
You
game.
also like you didn't put too many of those cards that have descent, like except for Mycoid maybe. But if you play it on anything, the aura goes to graveyard, which triggers your descended trigger. So I guess that's.
Oh, that is true. Yeah. I think I had written it off as being like okay, but it's probably a little better here because there's maybe enough ETVs.
It's particularly good with the snail, I think, because that probably
the snail will be pretty good because you can do that on turn 3 even. I mean, it's not quite blue black ninjas like in Neo where you're like do you block, do you not block or anything. But I mean, it can probably trade up. You can get another card from them. So yeah, it might have a role for sure.
To be clear, even if a creature goes into the graveyard and then leaves the graveyard later, that still counts as having descended. Like all it cares about is whether anything went into your graveyard.
Yeah, but yeah, I guess the snail will exile their cards, so they wouldn't even. Well, they won't really have descend on their turn, probably where it matters, unless they turn on like descend 4 or descend 8, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's
it
what
exiles anyway. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
I like Atali's favor in this deck because we are aggressive, and then like we're aggressive, but we're also like I mean that's the whole point of small game, right? Is that we're diminishing our opponent's resources while growing our resources.
Right.
If you go Atali's favor on a creature and you hit a snail, you got a stew cooking.
Oh yeah, you play your snail, you play Atali's favor, you hit another snail, and now you have a 2/2 snail attacking them with trample. Big game. You play your other snail. Oh yeah, no, we're living large.
I think the correct term is you got some stew going.
Got some stew going, yes. Yeah, snail stew. I like it.
Delicious.
Yeah.
I thought
But
that
I will say I don't mind hitting any of the 2 drops or 1 drops with the Tali Saver, which is why I don't feel too bad about this. Or even if you happen to hit a 3, I mean, you'll gladly put a 4/3 into play. But yeah, I mean, happy with any of the stuff that it would hit, pretty much.
maybe you don't want to hit the Fanatic
Yeah,
offering.
yeah. Fanatic offering would be a little, but I'll just put that to hand, and it'll be okay. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. You can always put it
Yeah.
in your hand. Okay. Dinos. I have my dinos.
Well, let's pull up your dinos. I figured like dinos would just be like build itself, like whatever. What if you people will make dinos for me? Like what you have your 2-drop that scales. You have your 3-drop dino payoff.
It's very much on rails.
You know, you have your pick of like dino rares.
There we go.
Ooh.
We have your 1-mana ramp into dinos. You have your cavalries that get bigger when you have dinos. You have your 1 frog so that Jason doesn't complain.
I think frog's good here. You need to stay alive. You need to ramp. I think it checks the box.
It's mainly for ramping purposes, yeah.
And it's important to have.
I think it's
frog
just a
DNA.
strong card. I don't know. It's just a strong card.
But Yearling is obviously busted. So is its Gwent. The problem is sort of in the 3-drop. There is the 3/3 that gains 3 life, and hopefully in this version it will gain 3 life a lot. There is the Thrashing Beep, which is just good on rate and potential removal. I think this one is pretty good. 3-mana 4/3 is always decent. Not letting people play instant thing can be pretty decent.
It's like that card from Brothers War that like said players can't gain life.
Mm-hmm.
Indeed. Colossodactyl, just rate monster again. This rate monster. I put Geological Appraiser because I can hit quite a decent chunk of stuff, and if not, I can keep it in my hand. Like if I have the Malamed Battle Glyph or Watley's Final Strike that I don't want to use. I put 1 Rumbling Rockslide. I don't know why. Triumphant Chomp is premium in the deck, I guess, because it will most of the time deal 3-4 damage. And then, yeah, Earthshaker, Dreadmaw, Seismic Monstrosaur is a card you can put. You can put the green version of it. You can put the 6-mana 7/7. It doesn't really matter. A big dinosaur will do. And Palani's Hatcher is looking like a pretty busted card in this deck. A 5-mana 5/3 makes a 3/3 haste the turn it comes into battlefield, and then makes another 3/3 if it survives. And also, you can curve it into another dinosaur and it gets also haste. So yeah, that's pretty great. But I think it's the deck that is very easy to visualize, but I don't think it will come together very often because you need to hit quite a lot of uncommons that are quite important for the deck. Because when you see it, I have Belligerent Yearling, the Ramp Guy, is it Quint? This thing is an uncommon, this thing is an uncommon, this thing is an uncommon, this thing is an uncommon. And when you cut all those uncommons, you're ending up with Burning Sun Cavalry, which is rubbish on its own. Premium removal that you have to pick early, so you can't pick those uncommons. And X-Jaws that are going to be contested outside of the dinosaurs. So, yeah. And yeah, I think that the chat is 100% correct. People are going to be very hot on dinosaurs early, and I don't think it's going to be an open archetype. But it's easy to draft when it's there.
I want to do green-red frogs and treasures instead of dinos.
And I'm sure you will be much more successful because it will be probably very underdrafted. So that's my dinosaurs. I will give it a B if I had this version of it, but I will never get that version of it. So who cares? Did you have something different, Adam?
No, I think we're probably within 18 to 20 cards of each other. Yeah, if I had to do a quick scan.
Okay, well, yeah, because it is on rails. I think that this is like the easiest one to visualize what it does because there's just so few options, and that's probably one of the problems that this deck will be having. I will put now Zach on the spot with his green white caves,
Okay.
because it tickled my interest.
Yeah, I'm interested in this one because I did not put many caves in my deck.
Well, I wanted to build a cave. It didn't start as green-white caves. This was the first archetype I built because I wanted to visualize what the cave deck looked like. And I looked at all of the payoffs, and I decided that I did want to make a deck where Back Colony would be functional. Because Back Colony looks very powerful if you can cast it with a bunch of caves. And I also want to have the cave in, because that's the gates ablaze, right? So obviously you're looking at this and you're like, well, we're splashing different colors, right? But it's not exactly green white entirely. But I want to be able to benefit from the green cards that care about caves and the colorless cards that care about caves. And I want to leverage some of the white removal, like Cosmium Blast, which you could probably find 2 of them if you need it, that are like good when you're defensive, because this deck is going to be from behind a lot, right? And I think probably there also would be like a Golgari Chaos, right? Because like the black payoff is fine. It's like the 5/5 lifelink, but like just looking at this, right? And I was also trying to follow the rule of like only 8 uncommons. A lot of the caves are uncommons, and like the big problem is that the caves don't really fix your mana, even though you want to be a splash around deck. They don't really fix your mana, so you can't really it's gonna be very greedy to be 5-color caves. So you kind of have to cut a color. I was thinking that black is going to be contested anyway. White you might be able to get into, and it has like these removal spells. So this is kind of the brew that I came up with, where you're mainly green and your white is your like support color, because white is very deep, and then you have some of the cave payoffs. Like you have in blue, you have the dinosaur, I think somewhere here, which helps you, which is like your 1 blue card that you're splashing, which helps you, which helps you like refuel. Like maybe after you've like board wiped with the red wipe, and now you play the dinosaur, you refuel. Notably, the white cycler, the Sunwing, whatever, the soaring Sunwing, gains life when you cast it. So it's another card that's like pretty good when you're behind. So, and I think this caves deck is going to be very hard to come together because of like the mana is super sketch in this build. I'll be completely fair. And the other thing is that some of the cave build arounds like look like they could be traps. Like there's that card Splunking, which is like can you ever put that card in your deck? I'm not sure.
You can if you're playing Amulet Titan in Modern.
Yeah. I don't think these cards would be contested. If you want to draft this deck, I think you'll be able to get a lot of them. Maybe the Frog will be contested, but
yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm high on Campus Guide. The Compass Gnome, I think, like honestly, it might be like we ended one with like you wanting one of those Dune Shifters in any deck, even if you were pretty aggressive. And I think it's going to be premium here. You might have to fight over them later in the format if people like form this opinion. So yeah, this is just kind of like base Selesnya, go long, and then hope to be able to turn on your cave payoffs. I thought that like 9 caves would be like sort of the high end of like the number of caves you'll be able to put in your deck. Like probably you have to really be going for that in order to get 9 caves in draft. But I remember like in the gate formats and stuff, sometimes you could really get a high number of non-basics if you were like the one person that was doing that.
Yeah, it's going to be either it's going to be atrociously open in week 1 and then overdrafted in week 2, 3, 4 if it turns out to be good, or it's going to be completely overdrafted in week 1 and then you're going to get it like late in the format. I think it's one of those decks. I don't know if there's just enough payoffs for it to be good, and it's not even the number of payoffs of the deck. I think that caves are worse than gates were in
For sure.
their nature, and that's I think the problem with the deck. But
And it's some of these like rares, like there's a rare cave in here, which is like honestly, it's probably just worse than Edgewell Inn. I think it's the Captivating Cave, maybe, or it's the Sunken Citadel. It's one of those. It's Sunken Citadel. It's like I can never tell if this set symbol, but you know, it's functions similar to Edgewell Inn, except it's that rare. And then it's got like some additional attacks that maybe you'll care about sometime. I don't know. But you just need to get the density of caves, so you're going to be spending picks on them. And then the Cosmium Confluence isn't like honestly that powerful of a payoff, but like no one else is going to want this card, so you're going to find it if it's open and you're the caves deck.
can make 3/3/3s or 1/9/9, or get your cave and make a 6/6 hasty something.
I mean,
So yeah,
basically corrupt triplets. You're golden.
if you're the caves deck, and then like, so you have to really spend all of these, you know, you're spending all these picks on caves, so I'll admit this is questionable, but I think like this is a home for these cards. And, you know, people are going to open these cards at the table. You're going to draft, like, you know, if you're sickos like us, you know, we're going to draft caves, you know, a few times. Maybe it's going to turn out that caves is better than we think. But I wonder what the decks will actually look like.
Yeah, I'm going to show my caves later, but because it's in a different archetype. But we can, I guess, move to the white-black, which I think is going to be a very, very solid deck. And we're going to show Adam's version of it. Present.
Yeah, white and black appear to be deep. That is for sure.
This is it. Mana value separate non-creature.
Yep. So this one's looking to try and be proactive, try and put some cards down and interact with the opponent's cards, so you can, you know, swing through with whether you have some like Iron Paw Aspirant that's going to be undercosted. We have some of the flyers again with like the Bat and the Guidewing. It's kind of what white's offering. Black obviously has a lot of the interaction that appears to be reasonably priced, whether it's Join the Dead or Deadweight, like we mentioned before. I do think we haven't really talked much about Fanatical Offering, but it feels like this is a potential deck that could use it. Maybe not as well as a deck that had like more artifacts, but I think you're still going to have some of like the freebooter that you're happy to sack, the Iron Paw Aspirant. If you put your +1/+1 counter on another creature, you're happy to sack. From the Cloud Guard, the 4-drop, you can sack the Gnome. So I think you're able to get some velocity. You see some cards there as you continue double stone throughout turns, and you just put some creatures down, kill their creatures, and keep attacking. So nothing super crazy here. I just think a lot of the cards are well positioned to be 1.5 or 2-for-1s.
No love for toads.
Oh, is that the 3-drop that puts the 1/1s in there?
Yeah.
Yeah, probably should have had that in there. I think I was running out of space. I think I'd rather have the 4-drop that's a flyer if I had to choose between the two. Like, you know, pack 3, pick 3, and I had to choose between the two of them. That one might play a little better because it gives you a little bit of evasion. But yeah, I can see that being very useful, especially with Fanatical Offering as an artifact to sack with some bodies left behind. That if you get a Bartolome or two, then yeah, I think that kind of goes up in your pick order because it's a lot of sack fodder.
Yeah, you can also play the 2-mana artifact that draws a card and then draws another one when you sacrifice it, if you have multiple sacrifice fodders. I think I in my version I also put a bunch of those 3-mana 3/2s that you can sack something to put 2+1/+1 counters, because
I thought about really leaning to that. I'd be interested in seeing yours because I didn't quite go that far down the rabbit hole.
I think I went. We can get there after you're done with yours.
No, I'm good. I mean, this is
the one card that I think is kind of weird here is like Guardian of the Great Door, just because like you're gonna want to be like sacrificing your little stuff in this deck instead of like going wide, right? Like,
Yeah, the hope is to sack it after you've done your Guardian, but that may not always happen. Yeah, I think Guardian probably does fit better in a deck where you're generating a few more artifacts. So maybe it goes in like a blue-white or like a red-white, a little better than black-white.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think you still can make multiple, like put multiple things on the battlefield, where you might be able to have it cost 4 mana rather than 6 mana.
I don't even remember what I put in mine. Boop, boop.
I will say this does have a chance. While you're pulling that up, you can have your mischievous pup to. This is a deck to have pup pick up, like your Chupacabra Echo or Skullcap Snails, things like that. Yeah, which are nice. Or even your spring-loaded Sawblades. Yeah.
Yeah, I have the Duskro's Reliquary here and Tinker's Toads on top of what you had, and the Glorifier of Suffering.
Yeah.
Mainly to pump those 1/1 flyers very quickly with the Ironpaw Aspirant, and then maybe Glorifier of Suffering to sacrifice the Aspirant to put another counter on the Gladewing or the Bat or something like that.
No, that's just 1, 2, 3. That looks really good. Yeah.
Then obviously the Bartolome del Presidio, obviously some busted mythic because why not? I don't know. I put this card. I'm not sure if that's gonna be great in it, but it makes my sacrifices give extra +1/+1 counter eventually, which has some kind of a merit, I guess. I also put the Guardian of the Great Door, but I do have more of the sort of standing on the board artifacts that can be tapped for its cost. I think that also, like, if you play those decks, maybe the 1 mana bring something from the graveyard back to play is going to be playable in this. It doesn't do artifact; it only does creatures. Yep.
It's good with the Guardian for sure, and it could be good with your Glorifier. Yeah, it's got some pretty good hits.
Yeah, but in the end, quite similar decks. I just went more on the generate bodies for sacrificing route. I don't think that it's still optimal in terms of how many things I can have for sacrifice. I also have the Vanguard of the Rose, which is not exactly Seasoned Hallowblade, but has at least some vibes of it. And as we know, there is no X1 height and no removal, so the 1 toughness doesn't matter that much. And it's one of the very few 2 mana 3/1s, which is, I guess, potentially interesting. And also, if you can make it into a 4/2/5/3, that's a big game. Somehow, Echo of the Dusk made also into this deck. Right, Pirates. Zach, are you happy with your Pirates?
Sure. I think I considered it more of go wide treasure generators. So you do have pirates. There are some pirate typal stuff going on, but more than that, you're just generating a bunch of artifacts onto the battlefield, and you're getting value from that.
Okay, here we have your pirates.
So I dropped down to 16 lands just because of the amount of treasure generators that we have, which might be questionable. I'm not sure if that's right in the format yet, but you have a lot of ways to turn your treasures and you're not splashing here. I was trying to think of what I would splash, maybe some white cards or some black removal or something.
The blue-white signpost would make a lot of sense here to splash, actually, because you're doing artifact.
Oh, sure. That's just more of a grindy card, and this deck kind of wants end the game, right? So you have of course the signpost that cares about generating artifacts. You have the pickaxe and the minecart and the belligerent. These are all just make treasures, which help escalate your game plan. The plundering pirates make treasures. And then you have a few just random pirate payoffs, like the waylaying pirates, which maybe you want to have 2 of. And I put this Strider in at the top of the curve just because, I figure we might just have generated 1 million treasures and have them sitting on the battlefield without really necessarily a payoff for them. You can put them into the Strider and get some payoff from that. The glyph I figure we're making so many treasures. We have just so many incidental artifacts. The glyph has like putting that on a treasure seems like pretty big game. Also, it like discovers when it dies, so you just get a lot of like incidental value. And you're really hoping to turn your goblin tomb raiders into goblin guides, hasty guys if you generated a treasure.
Yeah, I think the one thing is that you do have.
I would have liked the Wander glyph. It's the 1 red 2/2 that rummages when it attacks as an artifact. I kind of like
yeah,
that. Makes
I
sense
should
with
put that in
your
there.
pseudo goblin guide. Yeah,
That for sure should be in there for sure.
Yeah, I think a couple of more artifacts might be useful there.
yeah, or even the Scallywag. I know it's an uncommon, and you might have been pressed on uncommons, but it's another 2-drop. You can get artifacts when if you descended.
There's like a few there's some tension here, right? Because you want to up your pirate count for some of your pirate payoffs, right? Like Breaches really pays you off if you have pirates, and the whaling pirates and things.
Yeah.
Then you also want to have artifacts, right? And so there's a little bit of tension there, but a lot of your pirates just incidentally.
That's why you play pirates that make artifacts, like Plundering Pirate.
Yes. Well, there you go.
There is the pirate that makes it. No, the 1 mana flyer.
Yeah, he's the blue one. Yeah, I think that'd be really good. Spyglass Siren. Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that one seems like definitely primo place for it.
Oh, that's a pirate?
Yeah.
Pirate Siren.
Okay, well that's a big game.
Get in the deck. Yeah.
It's a great card. Okay. Black green. Whose turn is it?
Nose goes.
Yeah.
I have a black green, but I don't think it's linked on the sheet here.
Okay, I'm gonna be my
Right.
mind and present.
Black green, I think, is pretty straightforward. You just put, you have a 20 permanent deck, or not including lands.
Yeah.
Ooh, I like the defossilize. This is kind of the home for there is kind of like a reanimator thing going on.
Yeah, I was looking for your cyclers. Yeah, there they are.
Yeah, so I basically did this. I mean, I have a lot of self-mill. I have those 2 drops that become relevant in the late game, Echo of Dusk and the Capybara. Deathcap Marionettes to sort of let me survive and mill. Then, of course, you have the Akwai, and then Coati Scavenger is also pretty decent in those decks because it will be sort of a grave digger. Deadweights as a good removal because it triggers my my descent. One spider because it's another mill source. I have the Chupacabra. It's just very good in this deck. This thing should be triggering at least some amount of the time. I don't know. I do like that card for some reason, so I put it in. And obviously 2 land cyclers because they again trigger my descent, but also can be a target for the defossilize, which also can technically fill in my graveyard if I choose to. And then another chance, another way of getting card draw out of your mills. And there are a couple of other cards that I think that can be potentially good in this deck, like this silly treasure card that you can activate from your graveyard to discover 5, for example. So I would see like those kind of cards might be good. The more mill you have, the better those cards are going to be because the lower the chance that you're actually going to draw it, which is something you want to avoid. But yeah, it's a relatively straightforward deck. Some removal, early survival, and then hopefully getting to big things later and outvaluing your opponent and using some of that mill into your advantage by cards like Another Chance or... Oh yeah, I put this one. I thought it would be an interesting thing to put in a grindy deck. The Corpses of the Lost, that's a 3-mana enchantment. Skeletons you control get +1/+0. And no, is Marionette a skeleton? Of course it's not. I assume that there are no skeletons in the format except for the ones that it makes. It makes a 2/2 skeleton on the ETB, and at the at the end step, if I descended this turn, I can pay 1 life and return this to my hand, so I can replay it, make another 3/2 skeleton, and hopefully by that I can just amass an army of some sorts. And this card reminds me a lot of, in some way, of the Disinformation campaign and Dovin's Acuity as a sort of this kind of recursive source of value that aligns with what my deck is trying to do. So it's not the strongest bomb you can put in this deck, obviously, but I think it's just an interesting card that you might keep in your mind and putting in this type of deck when you plan for a longer game and you want to accrue this small ball kind of value.
Yeah, I can also see this card like being good in Demir, because like that's the one, like the payoff is like you mill it and then you if you descend and you pay 1 life, you return it to your hand. And then like that way you're getting benefit from your mill. That's honestly better than the signpost on common. You want to mill this card.
Oh yeah, it makes your Uchbenbach bigger because it's a skeleton. Yay!
And there is another card that makes skeletons. There's this like uncommon removal spell eaten by piranhas that turns something into a skeleton. So if your opponent uses that against you, and then you go 3 mana, ha! No, my skeleton's bigger.
Get in. Bed removal made even worse. Because you assume that I will never play that card correctly. Also, like, advantage of playing this in the green is that green will have several cards that can return a permanent from your graveyard to your hand. So even if you mill the Corpses of the Lost, I can get it back with my Coatli Scavenger, for example, because that returns target permanent card from graveyard to your hand. So there is a small value to be. I also see this deck easily being like some kind of if you have more frogs, some kind of Sultai concoctions when you just add like 2-3 cards from blue that will fit perfectly into your, like, some sort of late game kind of gameplay. Then maybe you can play the blue Land Cycler to make sure that your splash is more efficient, and then you can recur that.
It's a little awkward because all of the Land Cyclers have 2 pips. Where in like March of the Machine, there were some cyclers that only had 1 pip, right? Like the white and the red ones only had 1 pip, and so like I don't think anyone ever like.
I think that this set is just designed heavily to be playing 2 colors.
Yeah.
Like they everything that they did is saying you want to be playing 2 color decks in this format, and we're still gonna try to completely ignore those advices and try to build 5 color something.
Yeah, honestly, I think it's designed for 2 or fewer colors. I would say.
Jason activated. I knew that this will make it happen.
Jason, do you think that there's going to be like, what do you see as the monocolor deck then?
I don't know, mono white, mono black. I like not actually mono, but just like heavy. When I say 2 minus, I mean like heavy 1 color splashing. Not really splashing, but like less on the second.
Like 12-5 land split sort of thing. Like,
so when I made my like Rakdos archetype, I was just like, kind of hastily dumping cards while you guys were setting up, and I just noticed that I have 6 red cards. Like, I'm just so heavily black, and I can definitely see just because like how deep the Orzhov colors are, and you end up with some pretty skewed decks.
Mono value, separate non-creatures, close this crap, open another. Not crap because it's not mine. Open another thing. It's Adam's explore concoction.
Yeah, this one isn't super crazy. I mean, it has cards that explore and cards that benefit from you exploring, so that's not super wild. The things that I do think are kind of neat are the spells. So I like all the ones that cost 3 because you can play all of them at instant speed. So you can get your value with in the presence of ages, or you can do Confounding Riddle, or you can use your interaction spell with First Strike. So I think it's kind of nice to have that optionality. And because the instants play well together, you can also have your 1 in a blue balance, where you can hopefully get a map token to set up some explore action. Either put it on your flyers or proc from the gold card, the green blue 2/3. And then from there, there's some top end, just some dinosaurs to help you punch through if you need to. But you're trying to play more of a mid-range game and make multiple threats, and just have some interaction you can hold up, and have some counter spells to kind of back it up if you need to. I am curious people's thoughts on the 5-drop counter spell, because I don't think it will be artistic refusal level good, but I think it's not going to be unplayable. Like, I think it'll probably be like, I don't know, C+ level, but I don't know if people have any thoughts on that one.
I like it in my tempo decks.
Yeah.
When I built like first couple of turns, I built literally the board that they have to respect, and then I sit behind it, and they just either have to play small things I can ignore, or have to risk playing a bigger thing, and that just is backbreaking at that stage.
Yeah, because this is where I liked it. I wasn't quite sure if it would work well in a more controlling deck, though. So maybe it can. But you're going to be too far behind here. I feel like you'll have a board, you have other things to do at instant speed. They have to respect. So you can probably hold up a 5-mana counter spell and be all right. So.
Yep.
Yeah. Too crazy.
It looks at least that this deck is going to be pretty much dependent on getting the Nick and Zil.
Yeah, I think that will be a good card to get if you can. I don't think it folds without it, because it can have some evasion, it can have some beef, and have some interaction, but I think it'll be noticeably different if you have the gold uncommon.
There's a few other like payoffs that aren't in this deck. There's like the Merfolk Cave Diver, which is the 2/4 3-drop that gets +1/+0. That's in my version of this deck. And then also there's the Lantern, which is a green equipment, 1-mana equipment, and whenever the creature attacks, it explores. And that's kind of what is nice with Nick Zil, because then you have the like repeatable explore. And there's also the Seeker of Sunlight, which is, I'm not sure if you have that in the deck.
I don't believe I looked at that one. Yeah.
So, just like kind of repeatable ways to turn on explore and get that kind of value. And then I would even say that like you would want more top end, because like explore guarantees that you're going to hit your higher land counts or a higher number of lands in the battlefield. And so you want mana sinks. You want things to like, you want a boom that's going to like, I mean, you have the Stomper, but like I would want like maybe a little something more to do with my mana, because I know
there's another one. There's the land cycler next to it. It's just not showing up. But yeah, it probably could be a little higher. But yeah, it could probably be more than 3-4 cards that cost 5 or more. I mean, ideally you're trying to double spell. You're doing your Presence of the Ages to get a land to make sure you hit your land drops and a spell to play next turn. But yeah, I mean, it could probably have another 1 or 2. 5 or 6 drops, or it could have your mana seek like the 1-drop. You can continue to explore. I was a little worried about being too linear and just like leaning too heavily into explore. But yeah, it is a mana sink that you could use if you're hitting your land drops, which you probably should be if you're doing explore, or you'll just have above rate creatures, and then it might be okay if you're stuck on 4 or 5 lands.
So here's the question for like the team here. Do we think that this is going to be like the first set in a while where Simic is a thing, and someone could be like, "Oh, I'm drafting Simic," and they're not sad, or is this going to be like kind of fall in the same traps of Simic archetypes that we've seen in the last several sets?
I'm not going to force Simic. Let's put it like that.
I don't think Simic is going to be the best color pair. Let's put it that way.
No, I think I'm probably in any other blue X deck. But if I start in blue and someone passes me some good green cards and I'm not seeing something open, then yeah, I will, explore that option, unintended. So,
and there's a couple like Merfolk typal tribal things going on, but like they're at like I think rare. So
yeah, when you tap a Merfolk, you make a Merfolk.
Yeah. I'd like to believe that could happen, but yeah, it seems like Dinos was the typo they went for. So and I didn't put any rares or mythics in these, so maybe it is worth putting in here, but I didn't explore that option.
I'm going to go for my version on top of it, because I promised that I will show. I have the cave version of it.
Ooh, okay. Wait, this is the Simic caves.
The Simic cave. I think that's
nice. Yeah.
Well, the thing is that Explorer already looks for lands, so you can play more of those. So as you see, most of the cards are very similar. I put the Seeker of Sunlight. I think that it's a good mana sink, and a 1-drop that can later become a mana sink. With Nikanzil, it becomes quite oppressive if you start using it a couple of times a turn. And on top of this classic explore package, I put the Cave Diver. I think it's a good finisher for this deck, and it's a very good speed bump as well, because 2/4 is quite good against any aggressive strategies. The 4 toughness is going to be quite large. On top of that, I did put just like one Gargantuan Leech, one Benthesor, Bat Colony. I didn't put the Sweeper even in this because I'm too heavy on creatures myself to be playing it. I'm thinking about like supplementing my strategy with some extras. And then I assume that you're going to be able to get some number of caves during your draft, and having like one Scumpering Surveyor, but easily could become also the 2/1, because I guess that the Compass Gnome is actually decent when you can explore straight after you played it and get the card directly. So yeah.
So, do you think that is this a okay? So you have 2 cards that I think are interesting, which are Over the Edge and Staggering Size. Is this so? Both of these seem a little bit strange in like sort of more. Maybe this is more of a mid-rangey deck where we explore a bunch and we have a big merfolk or whatever, and then we give it trample, and then we win out that way.
Churn out a 9/9 with the Cosmium Confluence is in the range of the deck. So yeah, generally I see that the problem of this deck is that it's going to clog situation, and you have to break the clog either through the Cave Diver, which you cannot always use, or by building up something big and then staggering size it.
But then Over the Edge. How do we feel about this card? This to me struck me as a sideboard card.
It does explore twice.
Ah, okay.
If I choose so. So I'm playing it as a sort of sideboard card in the main deck because it can do something that will promote my main theme.
Yeah, like if you're exploring twice is either divination if you hit 2 lands, right? But you only draw lands, or you hit a land and then you get a counter, or you get 2 counters and like some scrying.
Or you get 4 counters when you have Nikanzil.
Sure. So like, yeah, it's not that bad.
Okay. I think it's playable, and I put it in the deck not because I want to play it. I put it in the deck because I want to show that you can play it. It's like, this is not every card in the Skeletons is there because I think it's the best thing that you should be doing there, but it's a thing that I think might be overlooked that can be done in this particular archetype, and you will always get Over the Edge. Like, there is no draft
for sure.
unless there's 0 copies open. You should be able to get 1 copy of it. I'm interested about this card, how it's going to work, but I think that it's a decent way of controlling the board through that, and then gaining the value. You have so much mana that you will be able to do it, and maybe you can even explore back to it when you have enough mana and you have like Seeker of Sunlight on the board. You can just quickly get back to it and replay it and start the process again. I don't know how possible this deck is going to be, because again, problem that it has is that cards that are good for explore are going to be contested, like the Axjaw, like the Herald Scout, River Herald Scout. So you might have a problem with getting those.
So one challenge with the net is that in this deck, we don't really have a ton of artifacts, so we're not really going to be drawing a lot from the backside, right?
That's true.
But like the front side is also just good in this kind of deck. So
we might need to put more artifacts in general, or things that make artifacts. You get only a couple of maps, and that might be a problem for the deck. You're right. If you put more of the Compass Gnomes or something, if you are deeper into caves, you probably should also be able to get them. Right. What do we have? Rust. Zach, are you happy to show your Boros?
Oh, I mean, my Boros is just like, honestly, it's not even the Discover. It's just it's an aggro deck, which I put together very quickly. So it might not be the best version of Boros, but we can definitely take a look.
Don't worry, we can show yours and then go to a good one.
So this curve, I also think, is maybe a little suspect, but we have just Boros guys, and I don't really see this as a Discover deck. I did put the Daring Discovery because I think this will just end games sometimes. It's like, you know, you make creatures not block. You hope to like hit something proactive off of the Discover. I think this is the deck for it. But then you're doing artifact things. Probably could use some more volatile Wonder Gryphs because this is another good deck for it. But you just have aggressive guys. You want a certain density of artifacts for some of your artifact payoffs. And your Discover isn't really any main theme. Like there's that like whenever you discover again or whatever card, which is I think probably just going to be a 4-mana 3/3 that you don't really want to play. Discover is just good, and you're not going to probably get a ton of it. So be happy with what you get. But yeah, that's how I built this deck as a artifact, semi go wide, semi artifact deck that's trying to punch through.
Yeah, mine's pretty similar to this. It leans. I guess the card's actually pretty similar. I have double Tomb Raider, and I do try and do maybe a little more artifact stuff. But yeah, it looks pretty similar to yours. I did the War Scribe rather than the Daring Discovery. But yeah, I mean, either one of those can probably end the game. Yeah, yours is Hazardous Blasting, and I guess mine is Trumpet Horning. But yeah, pretty similar.
Yeah, neither of you is. Oh no, okay, you have a toad. Adam doesn't have a toad. I think that there's gonna be a toad, white, red, and there's gonna be maybe a non-toad, and the toad one is going to lean heavier into this tap two things to get an effect.
Sure.
Toad is just.
Yeah, no, mine should have a tote. I had forgotten about the tote when I made this one. But yeah, tote makes sense when you have the gold uncommon and the Tomb Raider. I mean,
also, Hotfoot Gnome, which I don't think is a very good card, but it is good with the uncommon because the uncommon needs to attack in order to get you the payoff. So the Hotfoot Gnome can like tap to give something haste. So notably, this gold uncommon is very good if it can get haste.
Possibly. You also, I think that one thing that the Sunborn has is that you can use it to your advantage. If you're attacking with it, you know that the opponent is going to block. They're going to just chuck anything on that. You're going to get your value. So it sort of makes any combat trick, any instant removal much better because you can basically blow them out and you can use what is the weakness of the card to your advantage by being prepared for that. Or, yeah, again, even you have it. Mischievous Pup, you just do activate your Discovery, get it back, replay it, whatever, repeat. It's a bit slow, but you get a lot of value through that.
Would you play the 1 in a white that can give... Is that one that gives indestructible to your creature, or is it hexproof?
No, it's just hexproof. It's just hexproof.
It's just hexproof? Oh, never mind then.
You mean the plus?
But you know the +2/+2 trample, the +2/+0 first strike. There is an aura that does it on instant speed. That's going to be excellent with the Sunborn, and I think you can make it into a sort of like a mini plan when you're just going to bamboozle your opponent and force them to do something that they really don't want to do, and they will be. It's this sort of like ninjutsu from Kamigami on Dynasty when you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. Situation, which is always a good thing to be in when you're deciding what's happening. You do it on your turn also, so most likely opponent is tapped out, and also there's no removal in this format.
Is that 3-drop the one that taps a creature if you pay 3 mana? I can't tell. I don't know the name of it.
I think that this is.
Oh, that's it. That 2-drop. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. You might have been talking about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is a kind of weird thing because this is probably the most. This is going to be the most aggressive white deck, right? And I'm not sure if this, some of these when you attack white cards have homes otherwise. Like it may be in Selesnya, an aggressive Selesnya deck. You certainly don't want multiples of these because how much mana are you going to have to tap? We've seen that before. But like in this kind of deck, you will find spots where this bear will be pretty good.
They should have just given us Territorial Hammer Skull and it would have all been okay.
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah, nobody would have gotten upset about that being reprinted.
Right. That's it. We did the thing. We did the all the skeletons. So, chat, thank you very much for being here. Hope you found something interesting. I hope that you found a lot of things that you disagree with, because that's the whole point of it, no? We definitely don't agree on everything that we did, including our own stuff in many cases. Because we still didn't have the cards in our hand.
I just defer to Jason. If Jason contradicts me, I'll be like, "Well, I'm wrong." So
I'll just
I'm not right about everything.
Yeah, I remember vividly. I remember one time he was wrong. They were wrong. One time.
Do you have the example? What's the receipt, Circovit?
I don't remember now. It's probably something with.
I vividly remember, but I can't recall.
Look, I'm trying. Yep. Most of the time they were absolutely bang on. I think sometimes Jason is too much in awe of multicolor strategies. They are not always good in every single format.
I like I said, I don't think that splashing is particularly good in the set. I think the set is a 2- color set. So
yeah, that's true.
That said, I can't wait to see the tweets of all of the sick multicolor brews.
Oh yeah.
I mean, if someone makes a sick multicolor brew, I'm only happy for them. That's gonna be happening definitely. But I'm planning to at least go hard on 2-color synergies initially, unless I will have some caves and I will lose a lot of gems through that. Right. Well, thanks for watching. Any of you has something to plug, pitch? You're going to be doing something that is going to be amazingly interesting, Adam?
I don't think that I do. No, I'm just going to do the usual thing. Nothing super crazy.
Zaki?
Well, I got some stuff to plug. I mean, I have a podcast called I Love You Mana. It's on like all platforms. It's not super magic forward, but if you want like a fun a group of friends mostly making fun of each other and me, it's a pretty good listen. So check it out. The other thing is that if you're in Minneapolis, I do a collab with Sisyphus Brewing, which is a brewery out here. We do monthly drafts, which are super casual brewery drafts. They're the second Wednesday every month by the Sculpture Garden at Sisyphus Brewing, 6 p.m. And it's always the second Wednesday of the month, which will be next week. And so we're doing Chaos, and then the next month will be, of course, Lost Caverns. So, hey, if you're in the Midwest, if you're local, come check us out. I'm going to bring the Mox to gloat. So if this is your opportunity to mug me and steal my one piece of power. And I guess if you're also in Minneapolis, I'm hosting at Comedy Corner on the 24th and 25th if you don't have Thanksgiving plans. So those are my plugs.
There you heard it. Jason, when are the articles coming?
Hopefully this Friday. But yeah, I'll also be like streaming the set. Oh, I'm doing a set review on Tuesday also with Julie Wellman. Yeah.
There's going to be a plethora of set reviews. That's going to be interesting in its own right.
Well, wait a second. Is anyone here doing early access on like it's this coming Thursday, right?
I'm not invited, no.
Oh, I actually am doing it this time. I should have mentioned that. We can talk offline, but yeah, I'll just ping you offline, Circo. Yeah, and Jason and Zach. Yeah.
All right, and I will be doing not much, so probably figuring out the magic numbers with some bits and pieces from this one. But I'm going to put this thing on YouTube next couple of days when I find energy. Oh, tomorrow I'm doing actually a cool stuff, but no one is invited because it's in Cornwall and no one lives next to Cornwall. But I'm lecturing at the university, and I'm lecturing for some weird reason project management. And tomorrow I'm having a guest lecture from Michael Majors, who will be talking about project management in Magic the Gathering. He's one of the lead designers of WotC, so that's going to be an interesting one.
Awesome. And is that coming up on YouTube?
No, it's not. It's going to be for the students, which is sad.
You have to enroll. It's a little higher Patreon tier. You need to enroll at the University of Cornwall.
9,000 pounds a year, sort of Patreon. So if you're into that kind of thing, but yeah, I'm looking forward to it because it's going to be cool to listen about the set design and project management in Magic, and hopefully I can convince a couple of students to come to the FNM. Right, but with that, thanks for listening. Thanks for the people in the chat who contributed, even though we ignored them thoroughly most of the time. But that's because with 4 people, it's very hard to also participate in chatting with the chat. Thanks for my patrons for helping me run this thing and keep my wife at bay from complaining that I'm spending way too much time on Magic. It doesn't have 100% success rate, so you can continue contributing to the Patreon to keep her appeased. And thanks for MTJ's on for sponsoring me. And with that, I'll see you next week.